We have a nice little romantic walk between Invisible Kid and Brainiac 5.
I can tell you how that came about. That was not part of the script.
This is another one not on my question list. So
that was not. It was never part of the story. It was Steve Wacker literally said to me, "Have him kiss him on the cheek, just to fuck with the fans."
Oh my god!
Let's just do that. And I said, "Of course, yeah, I get it," because you can see Lyle's face is like, "Huh."
Everyone, and welcome back to the Men of Steel podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jmike Folson.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the future. We are once again digging into the Legion of Superheroes in our conversation about Superman and how that character is intertwined with this property. And to have that conversation, we are joined by several people. So for starters, this is a 2-part episode, and this is going to be a crossover. We are crossing over with the Long Live the Legion podcast. So on that note, we've got returning to the show, Jim Fetters.
How's it going, Case? Great to be back.
It's so wonderful having you back, and I'm so glad that you've got Long Live the Legion, and I'm so glad that you've introduced us to your co-host, Jay McKiernan.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. I've been a big fan of this podcast for a while.
That's so weird to hear still to this day. But we had one more person laugh, and that is a special guest. We have the artist who is the lead artist on the arc that we are talking about today, because we're talking about the Legion Foundations, and so we've got Chris Batista.
Pleasure to be here, guys.
Chris, it is so great having you back on. I frankly am flabbergasted that you're allowed to come and just talk about a book that you were an artist on. I wasn't sure what was allowed.
No, we're definitely. First of all, it was years ago, and I'm not even. And DC doesn't even do that Legion anymore, so I can't. There's no toes being stubbed or anything. Not many secrets and this person was killed in the making of the issue kind of thing are ever going to be revealed. So I think we're all good.
Okay, go. Well, again, I just really appreciate you being here. So, let's talk about this. I think before we get into too much context, I'm very curious about in the absence of context. Jmike Folson.
Oh gosh.
Having read this, and this is part of a continuation of a series that we did look at before. We did read the Legion Lost the Legion Lost miniseries. So this is a direct follow up to it, but there's several issues along the way.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's stuff that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So describe the overall story of Foundations, because we're going to go through issue by issue, but describe the overall story of Foundations and the context that you understand for all the characters.
Okay, so everyone who listens to this podcast basically knows that Legion is not my thing. This is Case's thing. It's a fun story, but Case is very intimately familiar with these things. But I was laughing before we started. This feels very familiar, Case. Like we've kind of done an arc like this before. I just can't put my finger on it. Seems like we're revisiting something. But let's see if I can sum this up the best I can. There is a big problem going on where people are losing time or something like that. And people are lost in space. Like they find a Superboy out in, I want to say, a warp gate.
Yeah, that's a thing that was explained in the preceding 25 issues.
Oh, yeah, they find people out of time. People are being snatched from time and being used for nefarious deeds, which I automatically exactly knew who they were when I saw them. And I was like, oh, I know that person. I know this person too. But come to find out that this is all some big brain 5D chess plot by Darkseid for some reason, who is stone crusted to his throne on Apokolips because the planet's dying. He's trying to restart the planet, which I didn't know was possible. But he's using these people from time and space to steal dark matter to restart the planet to give himself more energy / life to steal his body from the past to reignite himself and give himself even more power so he can be evil dark side maniacal thing again. And it's up to the Legion to stop him. Was that close?
You totally ripped off Thanos.
What?
He totally ripped off Thanos.
Just saying.
The whole young and old Thanos, you know?
That's right. That's right.
I did have some vibes of Endgame when looking at that, and it was funny to think about that, especially considering a thing that the Legion as a whole is weirdly, in a lot of ways, like DNA's test run before they would go on to do the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff, like the Marvel space stuff. And there's a lot of arcs in the Legion that feels very much like here's the beta test of what we're going to then do and be very successful in the Marvel space stuff that directly launches the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and the Marvel space like oeuvre in the movie space. Yeah, there's actually like weird lineage here on that front.
Yeah, I just actually made the connection now as I was thinking about. Sorry, it was old, and the old one is kind of usurped. I mean, they did it differently, of course, but it still was the younger one. You know, the taking advantage of his place and reasserting his role in the great scheme and taking it over and saying, nope, I'm going to actually do it this way now. And the movie did it differently, of course, but Abbott and Lanning, those two, they just did not get enough credit for just how awesome they were.
Sounds to me like Marvel owes you guys some money. So.
Not me. I can't take credit for that, but I think Dan and Andy are. It's a shame that they don't work together anymore, but they were. I was a fan of everything they did, and then all of a sudden I got to work with them, and they were really easy to work with, and we could throw ideas back and forth and stuff like that. We were all on the same page, which was really nice.
I mean, like this series is such a fun arc, and I know that or fun run in general. So Jmike, I would say that you got pretty close on all the things that matter about it. There's the stuff that you're missing is the stuff that was leading into it all, and that's that there's 25 issues of a lot of world building that happens in the Legion.
And don't forget, Legion Worlds was also part of the world building, and an excellent 6-part miniseries.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I Legion Worlds miniseries is one of my favorites.
I remember being very impressed with the sheer amount of world building, just the way they layered it really, really well. I mean, I was so impressed. Like every world, like the original series, you know, they definitely had all of that stuff laid out, but they actually like just even from Rimbor to Lightning Lad's world, which I'm just drawing a blank on the name. Every world felt like it had a culture and a texture to it, and I really appreciated that. And it looked like they were just having a blast with it. It gave it a real sense of scale.
I'm really glad to hear you say that, Chris, because that I've noted this in the past too, in other discussions around this era. Right, is that I think world building is the best thing that Abnett and Lanning do. That's in my book. Just to the points that you're saying, they're so richly detailed.
And they're detailed in a way where you're not lost in the details. You're just kind of brought into it because it's done in a very characteristic way. Like they'll use you'll have your focal point character just take you through that world, and then as the plot progresses around him, they would try. Like I remember the Timberwolf on Rimbar story, and I loved that version of Rimbor. You had Killian Plunkett on artwork. It was just a killer story, but I loved that, you know, this could have been your, you know, typical, you know, Wild West kind of world, but they made it work. You know, they made it work in a way where it wasn't like every other version I'd seen before.
Yeah, I felt it was like Nar Shaddaa from the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, so it definitely had that, but I liked that it, you know, they had the advantage of the fact that they could still connect it to Earth. So those kind of like Terran kind of ideals would be, you know, they wouldn't be so far-fetched. But sorry, getting off on a tangent. Just you said Legion Worlds. Legion Worlds. I told many people. It's all good.
And I mean, like, yeah, we should talk about Legion Worlds too. Jim and Jay, do you want to like give some sort of background on what went on in Legion Worlds, and then like what overall happened in the Legion leading up to this point, or I can do sort of like
happy to do it. So because helps set the table, I guess, is the best way to talk to getting to this point, right? So
yeah, we don't need to do every
Lost.
arc, but like here's, you know, like what are the big things that tie into this arc?
For sure. Well, because they all do, right? We talk about Legion Lost, right? And I think probably everybody listening to this podcast probably knows what that is, right? It was a 12-issue mini that dealt with the like a subset of the Legion being kind of lost in time and space, and the story of them kind of pushing themselves to the limit to get back home.
Yeah.
And then after that was Legion Worlds, which was basically a 6-issue miniseries that talked about the Legionnaires that were left behind. And to Chris's earlier point, introduced a lot of the specific worlds of the United Planets in a lot of really great detail, and told stories around those Legionnaires. And then that launched directly into the Legion title, which this is issue 25 of. We have several story arcs to get up to this particular point.
Yeah, things that I think are interesting that become important in this story specifically is this, like, the two galaxies situation. So conveniently, Legion Lost, yes, they were thrown outside of time and space, but they all woke up at the same time that they had left at. So or more or less, like could have been any century, could have been like any time, but they happened to wake up in a different galaxy that had been shaped obviously by Element Lad, who had gone mad.
I think that they implied that they were there for a year, and it ran concurrently with the regular timeline. That's why they had aged within that year, that it was concurrent with the Legionnaires that they had left behind.
Yeah, I just mean that it was extremely convenient.
Of course.
That it wasn't like some different century was all, considering that they were sort of like flung. It's still a great story. I was just making fun of one detail of it. It's a fantastic story. And we covered it here with you, Chris. So if people want like a full breakdown of it, check that out. But they established this other galaxy, and they established a means of traveling back and forth between it. And that becomes like this expansionist element of the Legion, like the book, The Legion, is this continuing to push the boundaries of the technology that they have, which I find really cool. Like, by the time that they're going up against Darkseid and dealing with like a boom tube based society, they have easy access to their own teleportation systems. Like, they are like, it's one of those cool elements of like, yes, the Legion is the most impressive team of their era. Like, and like, this is an era that is like far more advanced than like the Justice League, and I find that really cool, that like the Legion is scaling up in power and is able to deal with than a version of Darkseid doing the Great Darkness Saga.
It's funny that you say that. It's just a brief side. When we were doing Legion Secret Origins, I was with Paul Levitz and the editor at the time, Chris Conroy, I believe. And I would be the guy in the corner throwing out idea after idea, because I think that the Legion, a lot of times when people wrote it in the past, Justice League and Legion would almost have the same level of technology. And I always thought that was silly, because it's 1,000 years ahead, and they should make the Justice League look like they're playing with toys. And so I was throwing out ideas that the Legion should be able, what makes the Legion effective is that they should be able to get anywhere at any time. And in this universe, they have access to Zeta technology. They have all these things that are already part of the 20th century DC universe. And Brainiac 5 or whatever would have come up with a far more efficient version of that. And I remember Paul just shot down all those ideas because he thought he took it too far. He didn't like teleportation technology. He didn't like things that made it too easy for them. And I kept saying, but the Justice League has that, But the Justice League uses that. And the Legion should, I was like, the ring should have like Zeta tech in them and force field tech. And the ring itself should be some ridiculous thing, and because of just nanotechnology would have taken a whole 1,000-year leap with a Kaluan tech. And every idea I had was shot down. And I literally would almost go in the corner like, come on, it's the Legion. And yeah, so sorry about that. I'm going through a lot of old memories right now, and they're just like flashing back to me.
Yeah, well, I would say that was probably the biggest strength of the DNA run, of the Eminent Landing run, is that embracing the technology. Like, one of the other things I wanted to mention was the Legion world, right? Their new headquarters, which world. Was that's one of my favorite parts of this, and it's a big key to what's going on, because it's not just a building in the middle of Metropolis. It's this planet that, you know, and the fact that they have everybody's home planet replicated, and the fact that they've got, you know, they're not transmatter gates. Sorry, I'm mixing up reboots now. But yeah, they're using the gates to get it, and they can just, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go here. And it was, I think, Chris, you said it best. Like, the Legion should feel like it's 1,000 years in the future. And I've always made that comment of, like, when a Marvel movie looks technologically the same as the Legion, you've failed something in the Legion.
Absolutely.
Like, it should be, you know, you should be seeing stuff you're like, I've never seen this before. Like, this is blowing my mind. The best runs always do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's the Marvel movies is a good point, is because they all have the same tech. I really got sick of the masks coming down, the whole, like, that to me was just really lazy. And I always thought that should be limited to one character. Like, they have that level. And when it came to the Legion, it wasn't like it should almost seem like absurd, like what they could have. Like, just like you take a cop and they have their security belt and they have handcuffs, they have all these things that are their accoutrement that make their jobs easier. The Legion aren't kid like playing cops and robbers. They literally are law enforcement. They are tied into the United Planets. They have authority, you know? And I thought that everything the Legion should make Iron Man look ridiculous. Like, I wanted their costumes to be armor. Like, even though they look like skin tight, it was like they would be self-healing, like, you know, it would administer meds. Like, I had this idea that one of them get their arm blown off and the arm seals off and meds are being pumped and they don't feel it and they're still going into combat because you can't stop the Legion. And then I thought, then what do the bad guys have that the Legion would have to counteract? Like, just to show the scale of what they would have to deal with, because it's like technology would be run amok in that era. And I wanted to show that with Brainiac 5, they literally at the cutting edge, but how the bad guys would respond to that. How you would take something like Triplicate Girl, who, you know, I love her, but you could take her out pretty easily. But I would, as these Legionnaires, would be like, no, the Legionnaires have advantages that no one else would have. And that just made me sad that we never got to use that.
Well, she does have Trijitsu, right?
Yes,
so,
she does.
And she did defeat Ra's al Ghul. So, I mean,
that was a great story. Oh, I love that story.
Well, but like, for example, like the force fields that Brainiac 5 has, like, why is this not standard array for everyone? Like,
that's what I pitched too. I pitched that, and Paul said no. I was like, Ultra Boy's ring should be synced to his aura, where every time he shifts the super strength, it switches to a force field, so he's automatically protected. Because let's say I'm Lex Luthor, I'm a bad guy, Ultra Boy's powerful, but I could kill him within 5 minutes because I could figure out how to make him use his super strength and try to divide that with his invulnerability at the same time. It doesn't take that much to figure that out. And Brainiac 5 would have figured out that puts Ultra Boy at a tremendous disadvantage. And he would have like a serious force build, you know, just like the rest of them have. And also, like I said, they're 20, 22 or 28, whatever. The threats that they're handling, they really should be like top of their game, the stuff that they have. And then you elevate the bad guys and you show what they have. You know, it's like, I think someone like Grant Morrison would have a blast with the Legion, with just the crazy ideas he could throw out. If you keep him on the right path, you don't want to deviate too far. But I think he would definitely get, like, you need writers like, and that's what DNA, what I loved about what they did, like that Darkseid story. I remember when they told me, we did Dream Crime first, and then there was the hint of Darkseid, and then it was like, oh, but it's just it's a bait and switch. And then when the story arc was over, Dan and Andy and Steve Wacker, the editor, said, no, it's real, we're doing it. We were just teasing the audience. I said, we're doing it. And he said, then we're bringing in Superboy. And then you just sort of see my head explode. And they were like, is he gonna? And I'm like, is he going to be in the original costume? We put the Legion belt buckle on. And they were like, oh, we didn't think about the Legion belt buckle, but that's a good idea. And I said, done. You know,
that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody we were genuinely.
I was going to say, one of the things to mention there too, though, Chris, is that this story, right? The Foundations in issue 25 specifically was a commemorative issue, right? It was the 45th anniversary of the Legion at the time too. Yeah,
I remember I was like, I had just done the first 5 issues of my arc. And then when Steve had told me they were doing the issue, and I was like, and I was supposed to get started on the next issue, but then I was like, I can't not be a part of this celebration. So I I kind of like got some extra pages thrown to me there, even though I had to go to the next issue, but I wanted to be a part of it because Dave Cockrum was in there. And I was like, I can't remember why Mike Grell wasn't available at the time, but I'm pretty sure that he was asked because the editor was very big on Legion history, and he wouldn't ignore him without a good reason.
Yeah, I didn't know that context, but that makes so much more sense for issue 25 now. That's very cool. Yeah, that is not a thing I realized looking at it, but I was going to ask, like, what is it like working on a book where there are multiple pencilers and like just doing like a portion of it?
It's they try to make sure that your portion doesn't overlap too much, so you're not directly doing things that are so different from each other. Like they let me do all the recruits and the rookies, and they trusted me. They left me alone, and I even said I'm throwing in Ken Shakespeare. I'm throwing in Polar Boy.
Thank you so much, by the way.
I was
going to
ask about that too.
Yeah,
that was my insistence. I'm like, we're throwing in Kent, and I said to the colorist, make sure the hair's brown, and just like that's every real Legion fan, old school, is going to know that that's Ken Shakespeare. It didn't need to be. I was glad it wasn't said like someone said Mr. Shakespeare. It's like we're in this anniversary issue, so fans would appreciate that he was there. And I threw in Polar Boy, but the funny part about Polar Boy was that Dan and Andy had already done a version of Polar Boy in it was one of these guys with the progenitor, not the progenitor. What's that big guy who was in the last story arc? He was in Legion Lost. He was the guy who was the superhero.
Singularity?
Singularity, yeah. He was one of Singularity's like soldiers.
Oh yeah, right.
And he looked this big polar bear, like Ice Bear, but they was like, oh, we thought that was gonna be Polar Boy. It's like, oh, we have to throw in Breck. Come on, let's throw in some Polar Boy. But they let me create those. I mean, they had outlines for everybody, but they were content to let me come up with their looks. And I threw in that Rocket Raccoon looking thing just because I wanted. That was literally. I'm not sure why I did it, but it was just like, let me just do that. And those recruits were all supposed to come part of. They were all like at one point, and Dan and Andy were talking about the Legion being up to 40 characters. While that's a nightmare for the artist, it makes sense. Why would there be a hard cap on their recruitment? And there are other worlds that are joining the UP all the time,
right.
And they should be
taxes.
They should be the Legion, there's nobody like them.
And they need the dues.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were talking before you got on, Chris. One of the interesting things is that this feels like a very monumental arc, and then the book is canceled not too much longer after that. Like,
that's funny because from what I understood at the time was that fan response was going through the roof. They were very happy with Superboy. Our sales had actually gone up, not like huge numbers, but we were pretty stable, and we were getting a lot of good feedback. And the plan at the time was Superboy was not going back to the Titans. He was going to be in the Titans and the Legion at the same time because they had the idea that they didn't know which fixed point of time Superboy was taken from. Mm-hmm. So it was nebulous where to send him back. So they were going to, and I don't think fans were going to be upset about having Superboy in two different books, especially since both of them kind of made sense. One wasn't going to like be bad for the other. And I remember getting a lot of we got a lot of pushback from the Titans office because they were kind of getting annoyed. It's like, but guys, it's Superboy, it's Legion, we actually have a greater claim to what he means to the Legion. He's vital to the Legion. And this is something that has been kind of missing. And this version fixes a lot of the plot holes that were made from all the retcons. It actually worked really well. It was a solution that made everybody happy. But I remember he was always annoyed at that. Out of the blue, all of a sudden, we're getting a lot of like weird, like friction in the office, and all of a sudden, Dan and Andy were being taken off the book because they were going to start a new series, and it was kind of like a sucker punch because they, like I said, sales were rising, not like huge numbers. It's the Legion, but the interest was definitely there. We had tapped into people. They were really happy with what was going on. There were classic characters that were redone, like Wildfire. Like they were showing like this great appreciation for all of the history, and fans liked it. And Dan and Andy were given they were originally supposed to be given 5 issues to wrap everything up, and which sucks because they had set up storylines for. There was the Joe Ultra Boy and Cub situation. That all of these storylines. And in fact, Element Lad was supposed to be brought back, and Lightning Lad were supposed to be separated at one point.
I was going to ask you about that.
That was definitely in there. That was supposed to happen. There was so many things that were being set up, and then all of a sudden you're given 5 issues, and then they're trying to do an outline for that. Then they were given 2 issues. So if you're wondering why the last 2 issues are so like slammed into the door, it's because they were.
Okay. Thanks for explaining that, Chris, because I was actually going to ask you about everything that you just talked about.
Oh, and then to wrap it up, Dan and Andy, they were kind of stung. You know, it wasn't, and the editor didn't do it. Steve didn't do that to him. It was a higher up decision. And then they were like, well, we want you to stay. And I'm like, well, okay. I was sad without my boys because we really were, we were a team. There was like, it's a hard book to do, but we were all really into what we were doing. And then they were like, all right, well, you'll stay. And I actually had pitched a 2-issue fill-in story where I was going to do a new version of the Secret Six infiltrating Legion World. And I think fans would have loved it because it was going to be Easter Egg City. I was going to put Dev M in there. I was going to put Duplicate Boy. My editor loved it. It was going to be like an Ocean's 11 kind of story within the Legion, like a Mon-El versus Dev M fight.
Oh, nice.
But then all of a sudden, I got booted off the book because then it was decided that originally, I think they were going to get a new writer out of the blue. I'm not sure why, because they were doing such a good job. And then all of a sudden, it was the Wade Kitson book had taken over. So we were all kind of booted, which, I mean, I get it. Mark Wade has he's got the name, he's got the pedigree, and he's amazing. But it definitely stung because we were all like, man, we were good. I thought we were doing a good job, and he went with the retro look. We were more of the futuristic look. But I mean, I always thought it was kind of a mistake to do a reboot in the middle of an arc that was actually in a trajectory that was actually working for the book. But those are the higher ups that made the decision.
Yeah, I had made a little note here in my notes about this particular arc, about the different issues, that for me, right, I mean, and I don't know if you felt this way, working with Dan and Andy, but I felt like most of the course of the Legion up to about basically when you came on, when Dream Crime came on, and then this arc, I didn't feel like it was like a full-on Legion, because they really kept focusing on a lot of the same Legion Lost characters for a lot of it. But it was here, like when you jumped on and started doing these, that's when it really felt like, okay, the Legion's really back now. And to your point, it became a lot more interesting, right? I got it. For me anyway, for me personally, I found I was very much more invested in the book at this point.
Well, it's like that we said earlier about if you kind of look at the context when you're saying with the Legion Lost characters, that still was adding into the whole element of world building. They were world building from Legion Worlds into the new launch of the Legion, but it was still opening the borders. It was still making things bigger. And then when they brought in, Legion World, which, as we've discussed, I thought that was a magnificent concept because it put the Legion above JLA. It was like they had their own bloody world, and they were tapped into the United Planets. They were authority. They actually, like, people would go there to negotiate things. They had such an importance to the universe there. They were the center, and it worked because it didn't just say, "Hey, here's your world." Like, they had to go through this arc of like breaking everything down and then building it up. Like they went from the Blight stuff, which their plan was to always go from the darkest point to go to the lightest point, because they understood what the Legion stood for. Legion Lost had that as well, where it was like their ideals were what really mattered. Yeah, it's sad because they were, even with all their story arcs, their idea was to always keep building the Legion forward. And I think that's, it's ambitious, and you need someone who understands that. Because if you're writing it like you're writing the Teen Titans and stuff like that, and that's not a slight on the Teen Titans, I love the Teen Titans, but the Legion's different because it's like they have more of a more critical role than even the Justice League did, because they literally guard the universe.
Mm-hmm. No, I was just going to say, I love the fact that you said the Legion has to keep looking forward. And I always find the best Legion arcs are the ones where they're pushing everything towards a new idea. Whereas I think a lot of times where the Legion fails is when they get stuck in the past, where it's just like, we only care about the Silver Age, or we only care about this. And one of the things that I did really love about when Dan and Andy took over was that they were embracing every part of the Legion history and moving it, instead of being stuck in that like nothing important happens after 1970. And I think a lot of Legion writers get stuck in that. So I thought that was it's a really great comment.
Yeah, you're right though that there are some times, like when Paul came back to the Legion, he kind of was very, and I get it, that's an era that is of course incredibly dear to him, and he was a vital part to it. He had revitalized it, and he absolutely owns that era. But when the advent of our current technologies, which are evolving every day, kind of we can look through our old stories that we know and love, and they're kind of undone by the fact that I have a cell phone.
Oh yeah.
And the Legion doesn't. And, and Paul didn't have a very futurist take. He wanted to tell like his character stories. And I completely get that. But you got to throw in those wild curveballs. You have to, like, I remember I'm a huge Timberwolf fan, huge Wildfire fan. We're all classic Legion fans here. And there was no Wildfire, but I loved what they did with Legion Lost. I literally cheered when I saw that it was real Wildfire. And even Olivier Coipel's new design where he looked kind of like a knight. And I was like, oh, that's a bitchin' design. I don't like when you mess with my classic characters, but he looked great. It's like, that looks really good. I can't wait to draw that. And I remember talking to Dan and Andy, and they said, I love what you guys did with Timberwolf. And they literally said, yeah, we took Furball, we took Bryn Londo Classic Legion, and we took like the Joe Phillips Timberwolf, and we smashed them into one. And I was like, holy shit, you're right. He literally was all versions of Timberwolf in one and pushed a little bit forward. And I think that's what you would have to, like, when I was on doing Secret Origins, I literally was pitching I wanted to honor all of the characters' sources, their roots. That, like, you don't break something, you don't have to break a property to make it better. You have to embrace what it is, and you've got to take it forward. And I was throwing out things for every character. Like my plan was that you have this, Paul had this idea of an alien invasion, and they were so tough, they were kicking everybody's butts. And I said, why don't we have it that the most dangerous Legionnaire in this story arc is Invisible Kid? And he's like, why? And I'm like, well, Invisible Kid, like, these guys are so advanced, but Invisible Kid isn't just a guy who drank a formula who turns invisible, because we can detect him with our technology now. In the future, invisibility wouldn't matter. People could download programs, apps to their retinas where they could see it in any spectrum. So Invisible Kid's power is useless in the future. I said, why don't we just make it that Invisible Kid, literally in an era where technology is so advanced, he's the blind spot in the future. No one can detect him, like by telepathy, by anything. And he's the one thing the bad guys can't stop. And he becomes the most dangerous critical element in it. And you take this seemingly kind of benign Legionnaire and you make him very important. Let's take Triplicate Girl. Let's take all of like the lesser Legionnaires and make them so special. Like, why is Triplicate Girl special with us? Literally a planet full of them. We have to do something to make her the best Triplicate Girl, make her power individualized. Cosmic Boy's the best because he is so powerful and he's so gifted with his control. Like, everyone's got magnetic powers, but he's next level Magneto. Let's make each recruit take their powers, do something special with their powers every issue. And like, we go scientific, we go a little Warren Ellis with it. And yeah, I was just talking to the air at that point. Not one of my ideas was used. I was literally going, this could be so cool.
Well, one thing was used. Didn't you say that you pitched the Superboy wearing the classic look as opposed to wearing his more updated design? I
did. I mean, I wanted to, I said, we got to put him in it. We don't mess with the suit one bit, but the Legion belt buckle works because he has his belt buckle is already round anyway.
Yeah.
And I said it just would make him blend in. I mean, maybe Alex Raw. No, Alex didn't do that. He
did the stripe design. Costume. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I said every single real Legion fan is going to go batshit if they see him in that regular in the classic suit. But then Dan and Andy came up with the idea is you just don't throw on Superman's costume and you're Superman. It's like there's more to it. And I love that they actually had an actual character growth arc for him in that story. So It's not just a gimmick.
Yeah, so that's a thing I wanted to hit on before we actually get into the actual issues of this. The fact, why are we talking about this on the Men of Steel podcast? Like, this is a Superman podcast. And so there's two big things. So one, Superboy, the 90s Superboy, is introduced in the first issue of the arc and then plays a major part throughout this in a fun way. And then two, Clark Kent's a fucking character in this as well. which that one surprised me. Like when I was reading this. Yeah. So Clark Kent's a character in this. And so they play with the Great Darkness Saga concept, but instead of having like these weird clones, these are actually plucked from time characters. And so we have Clark Kent plucked from time and turned into a servant of the darkness and powered up in a way that, you know, honestly, they could have just done from the get-go, and we would never have had the fucking issue with the whole Pocket Universe Superboy. They could have just said, like, yeah, he was plucked from time, he was solar charged, and he was running around with us for a little while, and then he went back and forgot it all.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
They could have just done that. It's so confusing why they made it so complicated. Like there's so many head scratching decisions about the 80s. God fucking damn it. Sorry, that tangent there. Anyway, so I really enjoyed that we get Superboy as an active participant. He had been established as an honorary member of the Legion prior to this. I believe it was just in his own series when they were around, but it might have been a crossover somewhere.
It was a crossover.
It was a crossover in there.
Was.
I was a subscriber of Superboy. Like I was not reading Legion as regularly, so like I think I just owned the Superboy issues and I didn't have the Legion issues.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, in fact it was actually interesting. They brought him, it was a crossover event, so they had to go through time, and basically I think at the end of the day they had rescue Valor. Was that what they were trying to do at the end of the day? And that's so that, you know, they get Valor.
Okay, the other side of that story. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. So that brings up a note that I have for us to talk about that we might as well talk about here. Chris, why the fuck did Valor and Superboy not talk?
It's funny is that was my one objection to the story, was that I'm a huge Mon-El fan. Like, he was one of my favorite Legionnaires. And I always loved that it was like Superboy's older brother in spirit. When they had told me that, oh no, they're in the other universe right now. They took away key Legionnaires. Like, oh, I'm not going to get to draw Mon-El. You know, like I wanted to have scenes with Mon-El and Superboy, like interacting, like to show, hey, I remember you and we threw knuckles, you know, like, and we had a fight when you were champion. I think it was too late to do anything about it. And it would already been decided that Mon-El had been written out of the story. It kind of like, it made me sad. I remember I pitched something and it was so late. It's like, oh, let's bring back Mon-El. And let's bring in Sunboy like Dirk Morgna. I can't remember why they couldn't do Sunboy, but my pitch to take down Darkseid, and I know that you needed Clark Kent to do it. I was like, we could use it for another foe, was that you bring in Mon-El and he's got Sunboy, and Sunboy wasn't going to be a Human Torch knockoff. He's Sunboy. He was going to have solar plasma. He was going to have plasma beams. Like, Sunboy was going to be terrifyingly powerful, you know, and I had this idea that they threw in Mon-El to go after this great threat, and Sunboy is pumping him with solar radiation the entire time. So he's like fit to explode, and he's taking it out on Darkseid, whoever it was.
It's so funny you say that, because I was just the other day thinking about, like, I was wondering, like, has Sunboy and Superboy ever done a team up move? I legitimately was just like wondering that, like, while walking to my car.
Like it's like, and it wouldn't look like he was pumping fire into him. It would look like solar radiation, like, Dirk is incandescent at this point. All you can see is like his sun symbol. Like he's like a living sun, and Mon-El is just like, he's smoking at this point because he's so powerful. But it's like a car that's going to go right off the rails. And at the end of the story, when the bad guy, whoever it was defeated, was it going to be Darkseid? No. But I liked this idea, was that Mon-El's done. He's just like, and they have to take him to the dark side of the moon, and he's there for like a month. Like having everything drained out of him, because it's like he's going to explode at this point or something, or have very negative side effects. But yeah, those were ideas that if I had stuck around on a book, like I literally barraged Steve Wacker with Legion ideas all the time, and he loved them. He was like, "You nerd," and I'm like, "Yeah, that would be so cool with this guy and that guy." He's like, all right, if I give you a story arc, you'll do that. But yeah, Mon-El, I was kind of sad that him and Superboy didn't interact, but I guess maybe, and I can see the point in it, is that Superboy would need more to shine.
Yeah, no, from a power standpoint, like Mon-El is way more powerful
than Superboy anyway. And he has, like, you know, he's got the stature and everything like that. And you don't want him literally to Superboy the entire issue. At Cosmic Boy for that. So they would kind of like So I understood it.
Yeah,
you know?
no, it certainly made sense from a power shifting perspective. I guess, really the area where I'm surprised they didn't do it is that they could have just done it in the Secret Files issue, and just just allowed for a moment where those two characters are together talking, because that one's already like seemingly out of continuity anyway. Or not like fully out of continuity, but it's like a weird like sidestep to the continuity of the whole situation. So like they could have just like done it there, and we could have gotten that moment, because like it's so weird, and it's so nice that we get a moment like that, but with Pharaoh. Like, I really appreciate that, being like, checking in on you, buddy. Like, I know you're from the 20th century. How you liking it so far? It's like, oh, it's pretty good. I'm making my life here. Oh, that's nice. Like, that's a nice little conversation that they have. On that note, why don't we actually get into the conversations about the issues at hand? We'll kind of like breeze through the individual plot beats, just so that we're not here all day. But it's only 6.5 issues, so I feel like we can do this in not too much time, especially since we're chopping it up into a second episode after that. So on that note, we are going to get into the Legion issue 25, Foundations Part 1. So as we were discussing beforehand, this is a monumental issue, which I was not aware of. And so thank you, Jim, for bringing that detail here.
Yeah, it has a nice dedication to Otto Binder and Al Plastino at the beginning of it too. So it's kind of, kind of nice nod to the history.
Yeah, no, I see it. I honestly just like I rarely like spend too much time like staring at the credits unless I'm like specifically like being like, oh, who did that?
Right.
So like, yeah, I was like, oh yeah, it is celebrating 45 years of the Legion. That's great. and so that makes more sense for why it's opening with this like callback to the classic like introduction of Superboy being inducted into the Legion. And it's part of this like larger plot that's going on, and it has different artists for each of the different segments. And like Chris, as you alluded to, they allow for all the characters to have, or like, it's a big jump in the story when the artist shifts. It's not the same characters that we're dealing with for the most part, with the exception of like Cosmic Boy flying between like one scene to the next and just shifting artists. So we get this like callback to the Superboy story. We start setting up the resurrection of Livewire by way of seeing the memorial to Element Lad.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, Case, because one of the things we mentioned, we kind of breezed through Legion Lost, but we need to talk about the fact that at the end of Legion Lost, Livewire sacrifices himself.
Yeah.
But to sacrifice so that his friends can go back to their proper time and place. Basically sacrifices himself fighting what has become of Element Lad. So an Element Lad, as we know, is kind of this turned into this crystalline entity of some kind. So through Mordru's magic, I believe, if we go back and far enough into the history there. But yeah, so that sets up what we see at the end of this issue.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so they put these like two sets of like memory crystals, which they'd already established earlier in the Legion run. So there's a lot of like good setup and payoff throughout the Legion, like lots of doing the Levitz style B-C-D plotting going on, where it's like this will have payoff later, which is why it's so frustrating that they get kicked off the book.
Oh, and just to make it, I know we're on the issue itself, but their plan for bringing Element Lad and Livewire as two separate characters was that memory crystal that you keep saying, because they like to layer that, was that was going to have the original essence of Jan, unaged, when he was younger, like that, the purest version of Jan was still in that memory crystal. And with Garth, they were going to take Isla, his twin, who literally has his same DNA.
Right.
And clone a body for him, but make it male, and then put his essence into the body. Problem solved.
That makes total. I love it. I love that idea.
Sense.
Yeah.
You're not breaking the rules. It makes perfect sense. It's a simple solution. And you'd have Jan have to struggle with the idea of his version of himself that became this.
Yeah.
So there's more growth for him. He has to go through his own arc of like, I was this monster. But go on. I'm sorry. I just wanted to.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Cool.
I mean, that is like one of the coolest sci-fi capabilities, right? That people don't talk about a lot in sci-fi, right? Because you have, women have two X chromosomes, men have XY chromosomes, and all you do to make the X a Y is to snip off a little section of it, right? So it's something that's in sci-fi, but you don't see it a whole lot. And I'm really disappointed.
Well, they could also they could have gotten from Mech the Y chromosome, and they would have been fairly well set there as well.
Yeah. No, there's that too. Yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so we have this like tribute to the
wait,
Legion.
Mech wasn't his twin, though.
No, but the Y chromosome would be the
True, but she would have the literal DNA as his because she was his twin.
But they're fraternal twins by virtue of being.
He was a solo.
Right, but.
Mech was,
Yeah, Mech was a solo, but Mech is a male versus Livewire and Spark are fraternal twins. They're not identical twins. Thus, that's why like they have different genders, and so they effectively are just siblings that happen to be conceived at the same time. So like it works. It works, but like I'm just saying, you would be able to make probably a perfect reincarnation of Garth, but you would have to use Isla and Mech's DNA between the two of them.
While we're on the subject of Mech, let's talk about him a little bit because he actually is in this book.
Yes, yeah,
a decent amount.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the things, and I definitely wanted to ask this about of you, Chris, if you had any insight onto this, is that they go into here when we see him. There's one of the better Legion Worlds issues is the one with Ayla and Mech, and at the end of that one, the implication is very much that he's turning back into evil ways. But when we see him here, he's much more of a kind of hero worshiping Garth.
I think that I don't think they were planning on turning him evil, if I recall. I think they would imply it because it would be expected, but to see that it was something that he was actually struggling with, that after being he was always embraced, but he could see that he was embraced. He's given this second chance at life, not being treated like a criminal or a dangerous person. And I think it was going to be something that he was struggling with, but inherently, I think he was going to stay the path. And I like the idea that they imply, ooh, this is going to be the evil within, like he's going to turn. But I think long term, I don't think he was ever going to become the evil threat that he was implied to be.
Yeah, because I mean, I love me some Lightning Lord, right?
I mean, he's great. And I think Dan and Andy would have had a blast with him. But it could have been something where he does go bad, but there's like that whole it's easier if you just have him, I'm evil, I'm bad. But what if I'm evil, I'm bad, and I don't want to hurt my siblings either? I've got to fight these things inside me. I don't want to hurt them. I think that could have been far more interesting.
Or, I mean, as you just said, if the plan was to bring Garth back all along, you can set it all up by having Mech replace Garth on the Legion.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And then Garth reappears, and then now you have this conflict. I mean, that was the great thing about just that whole scene is you're setting all of this. You're setting all these layers, and you're making this more interesting rather than the normal Mech, mustache twirling. I am this, and
crazy
you guys,
person.
I don't have a twin, and there's so many Lightning Lord comics where you're like, really, like, that's the only motivation we're going with.
Yeah, he was just straight psycho.
Yeah.
That's not interesting after a while.
Right.
I like that idea.
Exactly.
That's a good idea. Like if he had been like kind of his replacement, or maybe being groomed to be his replacement. And then Garth comes back, and then he's like in his old anxieties, his neuroses tell him, this is what happens to you. You're always meant to be a solo.
It should have been you.
This, and then at some point in there, you could have empathy for him, even though it's misplaced. But it's like, I've never really liked a straight villain. They're just not interesting. And a family dynamic is always fun. Like you need to put your characters through hell.
Yeah. I do want to get back to like just going through the beats of the issue. Because we'll definitely talk about Mech when we come across him again in a second. So, but yeah, so as we noted, we are introduced to a bunch of the Legion cadets, and it's just a lot of Easter eggs for old school Legion fans. So, Chris, thank you for placing those Easter eggs there, since you're the artist on that section.
They left me alone. It was nice.
I love how Comet Queen just keeps coming back. Like, of all the characters that, and I
the
appreciate
distinct
that.
look.
I threw her in there.
Yeah.
I was like, she's got to be in there. You got to have Comet Queen. You got to have her in there.
Yeah.
So Connor Goldsmith talks about this on the Cerebro podcast with all the X-Men characters. Like, it's the ones that have distinct looks that are going to get those extra appearances, because in the crowd shots, like, it just makes sense to have them there, because you don't have to like do all this work to explain like, the differences between like, I don't know, like Cosmic Boy and Magnetic Kid.
Or realistically, most of the Legionnaires in the 60s.
Yeah.
Like,
they all
white.
they all look alike. My hair's parted this way,
Yeah. Well, that's why Mike Grell was so critical. The sideburns, like he was what made it so you could tell who everybody
That's
was.
That's true.
So a bunch of the Legionnaires get called away. And this is one thing I wanted to mention when we were talking about the advancements of technology. I think one thing that they do well with the Stargates, like the teleportation system that they have, is that it requires the Shikari or another one of her like tribe to act as a navigator for it. And that keeps it from being too powerful. Like it has this like, it is unlimited teleportation, but it requires a navigator to get there. And I think that's a really cool element of it, because it could very well just be like power creep unto a level where you're like, how is this not like being used? Like for example, like in Irredeemable, like the way teleportation becomes like this tool of this alien race uses for weapons, where they have like whips that like teleport away your skin and shit like that, where like you know, like the level of advancement that you could get with infinite teleportation technology. And it's nice to have like a focusing agent that is like, okay, well, we have the navigator here. So anyway, so they come onto the ship that's being attacked by like space phantom type, I forget what they're called exactly. Warp phantoms. I was very close. Warp phantoms that like came out of the Stargate attacks the ship. This plot thread will lead to the discovery of Superboy by the end of the issue.
Spoilers.
Spoilers on a 20-year-old story.
And also, like we said, we're going to go beat by beat in this issue. We're pretty far into this
We're
episode. So here's where we get the mech stuff and the recollections of it. I find it's an interesting digression, and I appreciate that, knowing that this is a commemorative issue. It makes a lot of sense to spend some time on the mech dynamic, because I think that is a really important like supervillain in the pantheon of the Legion of Superheroes. And so to like it, like it's an interesting dynamic, like we said, like having it be like this villain who has like this love for his siblings and the shared origin with them is a really dynamic character to play with, and he's played such a vital role in like periods, like in 5 Years Later, like he has like a very big part in like Garth's story. You know, it's good that we spend some time with him here, even though he's not going to be a main character in the actual story arc that this is like the kickoff to.
No, it's good to have him, because you need to understand, again, spoiler, the spoiler of Garth's return needs to have context. And so this kind of provides that, because at the end of the day, you know, if you zip through this issue, right, this issue it's a long issue, right? It's because it's a 25th anniversary or a 25th issue and a 45th anniversary celebration. This is really designed to bring in new readers, right? Is part of the purpose of this particular issue.
Yeah.
And so you need to have a lot of that intro stuff, that intro shorthand. And because Garth becomes a kind of a central element of this particular story, you need to be able to build up his story for these new readers.
My only pushback on that, and it's probably because I've read so much Legion, is at this point the Rand's family origin story is kind of like the Batman origin story, where you've seen it so many times that you're just like, and like I love seeing Cockrum come back. Like it's amazing, but I wish he had done something different. Like I just like to me this is when you do the Legion origin story again, but you put whatever changes that you want, and then you can focus on the three of them. Just because I've seen it too much. So I don't know, I got to ask, like, Jmike, since this is not overdone for you, did that work for you at that point?
Well, first I thought you were gonna say Uncle Ben, which is gonna make it even funnier.
Yeah, you know what, that's actually
this is, I want to say, my second time coming in contact with that story. So no, I was still like, who is this guy? This guy came out of nowhere, and I was like, oh, it's their brother. Gotcha. Ha.
Yeah,
I know what's going on.
We've stumbled across Lightning Lord a couple of times, but I think the only time that we've seen a story in something we've covered on the show was when we covered the cartoon.
Mm-hmm. But I do like they gave the story that they gave along with him having the flashbacks of like growing up a Solo, and then him trying to be rehabilitated, and then with Garth visiting him in prison. I was like, oh, this is sweet. This is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's more emotional complexity there. I like it.
Yeah. Although they've never talked about how they have so much advanced technology and they can fix so many things, but apparently their psychological research has not really gotten better.
Well, they had the whole thing with Starboy. Like, it's not this era of Legion, but like where he has mental problems that cannot be solved in the 20th century.
I was like, man, they really have him like locked down in like a giant chair with his hands and everything. I was like, oh, that's dark.
I mean, a character with mental health issues that has electrical powers can't help but sort of invoke like electroshock therapy kind of iconography. I don't know. I
know. I think that psychology would have advanced, considering they have like people from Titan who could literally go into your psyche, and help you cut through a lot of stuff. Like, I know you're not telling me the truth. I can actually go into your mind and see, I imagine that would help with multiple personalities. And I mean, come to think of it, it'd be a really cool story if you knew how to write that, like with some scientific theory behind it, but just how a couple of therapists, maybe one for each personality, to, try to delve into this guy and help him become whole. I mean, you could do some real, that's what we say about taking the technology and the ideas forward. Like a Legion story should always push things forward.
The problem, of course, is that then you don't have any villains.
That's true. They'd all be pretty villains,
right? Because
they could be shown, this is going to get you here,
Yeah,
I could show
like
you.
Here's Universo. We fixed him, so now everything's good. Or,
yeah. I mean, that is potentially the situation there.
Sorry, I ruined my own.
No,
point.
I mean, like, I do like the idea of like rehabilitating like past villains, and so it does create a situation where you only have so many stories you can tell because you can't like keep bringing back the villains of yore. But then that does lend itself to a more utopian viewpoint, and I do appreciate the Legion like being the Star Trek of superhero comics. Anyway, moving on. The next big beat is we jump back to the like outside of this ship that's in distress, and we're reminded of Apparition, aka Phantom Girl, Tinyawazo. Her mother is president of the UP, and so we get sort of a reminder of that, and she's kind of a bitch.
No, not kind of. Not kind of. That is her sole character trait.
Yeah, just to make the Star Trek connection, this is the Troy situation.
Right.
Oksana Troy. We cut back to the cadets, and so this is a prompt for us to explain the Element Lad situation. So it's a good reminder, if you haven't read Legion Lost, like what was the deal with Legion Lost, and like which is seen as sort of the jumping on point for like this era of the Legion. And it's also obviously huge foreshadowing for then what will happen with the character at the end of the issue and for going forward, setting up those plot threads. Anyway, the Legion is successful in closing defeating the warp phantoms and like closing the issue with the gate. And it's like, oh, we found a thing in there. Oh, it's Superboy, which should be the cliffhanger for it, but this is an extra long issue. So not only do they find Superboy, they decide to go to the Memorial of Element Lad, and here's the dun dun dun.
That's right.
A resurrected Element Lad, but with the mind of Livewire.
What?
It's funny that I just had based on the Element Lad Livewire thing. It was something that I tried to imply in later issues. I don't think anyone picked up on it, but it was the longer Garth was in his body, he started to wear his hair differently, like the way Garth would.
Yeah, I did notice that.
And like he's pulling it back while Element Lad's was shaggier. So I had him pulling it back because like the Livewire's hair was kind of pulled back. Like, and I don't know how many people caught that, but my editor loved it. He was like, "Oh, that's nice."
I noticed that he seemed to be using more like lightning-ish powers towards the end, which I wasn't sure if he full on just had those powers or if it just like kind of looked that way.
No, he had his lightning powers. Yeah, he definitely did.
Okay. Yep. Awesome. Super fucking powerful, by the way. As like, we need to talk, like, when we talk about like most powerful Legionnaires of all time, the combined abilities of Livewire and Element Lad in a crystalline body version of a character.
Yeah, that'd be scary.
Yeah.
It's like, what was it in Superboy's Legion, Jim, that you were on for? We talked about how they only allow, or like they wiped out the Daxamites, and it was like, okay, well we can only have the Tromites or the Daxamites. We can't have both. Like it's too powerful. Anyway, so like I said, it's the dun dun dun, but it's not even the dun dun dun, because there's another dun dun dun, and that is that this callback to the opening story of the Legion of Superheroes with Saturn Girl, Lightning Lad, and Cosmic Boy. or I think it was Lightning Boy in that first issue, right? Like, yeah,
Yep.
you know, like go to Smallville and like take Clark Kent into the future. Anyway, in this, they take Clark Kent into the future, but it's not the future, or it's not the Legion's future. It's fucking Apocalypse, and that this pageantry was all for a reason to summon him for some reason. I don't know. It doesn't seem like they needed it for anyone else, but for him, it was a great excuse to redo the story and steal him away. And the dun 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 is Welcome to Apocalypse, and this sets up then not one, but two Superboys that we are going to have to deal with in this story.
Exactly.
So, and I just wanted to make this comment just because we always, like, on the Long Live the Legion podcast, we always call out arcs that we never really get to talk about. Eric White did that final dun dun dun. He did the beginning
I love
part.
his work on that. Yeah.
It was so beautiful. Like, he captured the Silver Age so perfectly. I wanted to make sure that we said something that
I was forgetting his name.
So
Thank you. I forgot who. I was like,
So,
I remember he specifically stayed on drawing that interpretation of Clark, and I had to imitate it at one point where they were sending Clark back, and he had the same haircut and the t-shirt and his plaid, and I was like, that was cool. I actually liked that his Clark looked more like a real boy.
No, thank you for mentioning that. I'm terrible about referencing artists, so thank you.
no problem. So,
moving on to the next issue. So we've got a motionless Darkseid surrounded by his servants of darkness. I was confused because I was coming from the perspective of a fan of the Great Darkness Saga, where they were all like the copies, and so I was assuming that these were all the copies, but then it's revealed that they're actually all time displaced, like mind controlled ones. And I think that's the intent. I think the intent is to fuck with people who are expecting it to play out the same way. It's not just doing the Great Darkness Saga, but updated, even though it is in its own way. It's got plenty of other stuff going on. On that note, let's talk about the designs for the servants, because I find them really dope. And Chris, you're the artist. Like,
it's funny that you say that. I found when I did my spring cleaning, I found a lot of the original designs, so I'll have to scan them up.
Oh, that's awesome.
Basically, they told me the servants, they only had one that was really defined, and that was Orion, and the rest they were just like left up to me. They were like,
oh, no kidding.
And I was like, so I thought Firestorm would be great because he'd be like ridiculous. I threw in a white Martian but made him black because they're all in that coal black.
Is that the one with the mouth in the chest?
Yeah. That's a white Martian.
Thank you. Okay.
that's the one I couldn't figure out. Thank you.
Okay, I assumed that was Jean Jones, just in like his most like predatory looking form.
It could be, and no, absolutely. You know, it's like the implication could definitely be there. There was one with the staff. I just thought we needed to throw in one Kirby-esque one. I don't know who that character is. I just came up with it.
I was going to ask because that's the only one I couldn't identify, and like,
but I wanted to. I thought it wouldn't be fair that everybody had to be like, you've got all these centuries of history. There had to be somebody.
No, that's one of the things I like about like the Great Darkness Saga, where it's just like, oh, it's superheroes from all over the galaxy that they pulled from.
So I don't know who that character was. It just, I was sketching some stuff out, came up with it. They loved it, and I was like, okay, let's use that. And
I love that, except my only caveat is that I wish there were more, because it was driving me insane, because it was the only character I didn't know. I couldn't just immediately identify. I'm like, is it Starman? Why the fuck would it be Starman? Like
I think maybe in the original script there was like a Hawkgirl character. I think that was definitely part of it. I do remember that there was supposed to be lots of minions, so I came up with like the Nazi looking cadets with the black and red uniforms, which would be much easier to do in crowd scenes, because crowd scenes are a nightmare for an artist in a Legion book as it is. So I needed just you could just tell who they are. And I made them all look white, you know, so like to give them that whole Nazi kind of thing. But yeah, the servants, there wasn't, and one of them is definitely Lobo.
Yeah.
I remember saying we got to use Lobo, because why the hell wouldn't you use one of the most dangerous bounty hunters in the universe? Yeah, there wasn't a lot of they didn't put that much into them in terms of, it was just Orion, which was the most important one, to be honest.
Okay, so I have a question about the Green Lantern in the group.
Yeah, he was a Green Lantern. That's right. There's a Green Lantern.
Oh, I thought that was Cyborg.
No. It's like, it clearly has green constructs, and if you look at it, like the chest.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of looks. You could go both ways, because the first thing I thought was a Green Lantern. Then I was like, no, that's Cyborg, because he's all metal. Then I'm like, yeah, no,
it's a lantern. I now I'm remembering it was just a lantern. I just thought that it would be easy, not really, it just made sense to grab the real heavy hitters from what you would take from the DC universe. Like, you'd have to throw a Lantern or throw in Firestorm.
And a Lantern makes sense as a callback to the Great Darkness saga because they had a Guardian as like one of the servants of darkness.
Yeah, it's like I just tried to make sense out of like, what would be if I'm looking for my rogues gallery of people that I want to kick everyone's ass with. I'd be like, yeah, let me get a Kryptonian, let me get that, because it just makes sense that the pieces are there. You don't necessarily have to just come up with entirely new things just to suit what your perception is, unless there was something that you were coming up that was so essential to the story.
Okay, so here's then the question about the designs for them. So you said that Orion was locked in. Was Orion's design locked in already?
No, none of their designs were locked in.
Okay,
I made them all up. Oh, and Big Barda, I wanted because I love Big Barda.
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
I just said, can I throw in Big Barda? And she and Scott Free are my favorite new gods. So they were like, you want to throw in Big Barda? I showed them my sketch. They're like, yeah, you're throwing in Big Barda.
so basically the directive was like, we need like a shadowy metal as fuck version of all these characters. And that
was it. That was it. Just like, let's see what you got. I remembered what Keith did. I needed to reflect that, but then do something completely different, other than the fact that they were black. I was going with like, I wanted them to have that unifying red, black, and white theme. Like Superboy, the evil Clark Kent was definitely like this Romanesque looking soldier, but with like heavy blacks. And I had a blast coming up with those designs because, like I said, we were all on the same page in the office. Like, everybody was totally into this like storyline. We loved the book. Everyone knew the book. And it's like, you can tell sometimes when you see people do the Legion. I remember joining the Legion in an issue of Booster Gold, and I was really irritated because the colors are nice, but they don't actually look at they got all the colors wrong for all the characters. I was like, wait, this isn't the Chameleon Boy costume I see in the new book, so I'm just going to color it like that Chameleon Boy. Instead of looking at, like when you do the Legion, I think it's vitally important that if you come onto the book, you better understand the history, and you better love the history. Even if there's things you don't like about it, you got to love it, because it's the only way you're going to make it work. And you can tell when people don't like the Legion and they're trying to write the Legion.
Yep, 100%. 100%.
Although I will say this, I always get caught with these stories of why he keeps pulling Orion.
Yeah.
Like that's the one that never makes sense to me. It's like, and especially the real
because he's
Orion.
such a shitty dad.
It's like, what that?
Why did it bite your hand?
Yeah, but he just can't. He's like, no, I just need to abuse my son. I just need to. Like, I didn't get a chance to growing up. I just need to abuse that son. Like.
What? That was like, even other dark side was like, why would you pick Orion? Like, of all people, why would you pick Orion? And I was like, oh, right, because the prophecy. It was like, that was one of the dumbest decisions he could have made.
Right. Yeah. But we have to say, Servant of Darkness Orion looks metal as fuck. Like,
awesome.
Like, I just need to call out specifically, and this is why I was like getting at like the Orion part, because like he looks like the fucking Destroyer.
There you go. That was intentional, my friend.
Like, I love it.
I was going Kirby all the way, and I was like, I'm throwing in. He's gonna look like a version of the Destroyer, and I'm glad you caught that.
Fantastic. Okay, just needed to get to there. So then we get to what I laughed so goddamn hard when I was reading through, mainly because I just recently read the series that this is referencing, when we get to a time skip and they do 5 weeks later. and considering I just finally finished reading the 5 years later dual omnibuy.
Ooh,
well done. It took me years.
I'll believe it.
They were sitting beside my bedside table for goddamn years of being like, yeah, no, I should finish that. Oh, okay, I'll finish it.
So we'll invite you to join us when we tackle the 5 years later.
It's a lot.
But then we get a great group shot of the team flying. I am definitely using this as my the cover image for the Men of Steel art, just because it's a great shot with Superboy in this costume, which stands out as opposed to like just his classic costume. Just looks more like other Legion of superhero stuff.
Oh, so it actually ties into everything we're talking about with Superboy. Was when I first drew Superboy in the arc, Teen Titans was being relaunched with McKiernan and Geoff Johns. Superboy had kind of changed, where the Superboy I was doing was tying into the Superboy that they had for like the last 10 years, the leather jacket one. He wasn't gigantic. He was in great shape, but he was leaner. He was smaller. and I drew it because that's the way Grummet and everybody had drawn him.
Sure.
So over the course of the story, if you notice, Superboy starts getting bigger.
I noticed that because by the
Yeah.
end, when he's with Superman or with Clark and he's like looking very ripped, I'm like, oh, that like he's looking very big by the end.
And that was because they told me I had to make him bigger, because in the Teen Titans book, he was drawn pretty big, which made sense because Clark Kent's like a 6'4" guy. He was never small, you know. He was always a well-built dude. Like that guy just was like there was no way anyone was going to call him a nerd. It was, so I didn't mind that, but it was, if you could definitely see from the first issue I did of him to the last issue that he is much bigger.
Did they tell you that he also needed a receding hairline over the course of it?
Oh no, I insist that he's got the spit curl. I'm like, Superboy's got the spit curl. No. He's not going to have that haircut. That was the one thing I loved that Teen Titans book, but I hated Superboy's haircut. I was like, and I remember when Francis Manapul doing Super Bowl, he took that old haircut, but he spiked it up and he made it look more like a real haircut. He looked more modern, and instead of just the Clooney cut. That was the only thing I didn't like about his design, but it was a great book. I love that Teen Titans book.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to talk about that at some point on this series, because at some point, like Titans Tomorrow, if nothing else, is certainly worth discussing, and the whole like Superboy being turned into a clone of Lex Luthor is worth discussing. I know I've ripped on it plenty of times. I'm sorry, I just grew up with him being the clone of Paul Westfield modified to look like Superman. Anyway, so we get the friction that is going to be a core part of the story, which is that Superboy is very headstrong and really pisses off Cosmic Boy. And in this scenario, it's because Superboy just keeps on calling the Stargates Space Gates, which there was a moment where I'm like, wait, but is Superboy speaking Interlac, or are they using a translator? Like either if it's a translator, I feel like those words might actually get lumped together, like if what he's called, you know, because they're not speaking 20th century English unless they are, but that's not the normal thing they're speaking.
So you're saying it would be corrected anyway because of Interlac?
Yeah. I always figured that there was some kind of hand wavium, either through, you know, telepathic earplugs or, you know, Saturn Girl did something.
I'm totally fine with whatever hand wavium it is. I am here for that bullshit, but I am just curious what that bullshit is. And like I said, like it's only just one where I'm like, does that make sense that you'd get mad about like the saying Spacegate versus Stargate, which again doesn't actually matter, because the point is that Cosmic Boy is annoyed at it. And I will say this, rereading this arc after listening to your episodes on Cosmic Boy made me really appreciate him as a history buff, and really appreciate like him being this like believer of like the myth of Superman. I thought like I don't want to say fully changed, because I always had this like understanding that he was a character who had an appreciation of history, but that he was specifically a character that had appreciation of history.
He had the miniseries about it during the Legend Day, where it was established that he was a historian, and that he went back because he wanted to appreciate history. And I always liked that about Cosmic Boy, and to tie into the whole, like, he was a stick in the mud. He was the guy who was always doing the right thing. Ra's al Ghul made a comment earlier in the Legion run where he said the word is given, or something like that. Like Cosmic Boy had given a command to the Legion that Ra's al Ghul was overhearing, and he laughed at it. And he goes, "Legion, we are a go," or something like that. And he goes, he's just like the square-jawed Kryptonian. Like, he made a comment that he was reminding him of Superman with how heroic he was, and he was sneering at it. And it was that Dan and Andy had always wanted Cosmic Boy to be that guy for the Legion. He literally was the Superman of the Legion in terms of the idealism, the heroism, the guy who always gets it right. And yeah, he's a bit square.
Or more than a bit.
Yeah, more than a bit. He's got a stick up his butt, but there was a reason for it. Is that he's focused, you know, and that's why you had Livewire being more of the wild card, you know.
Yeah,
that's how they worked.
Right. I mean, when so on our podcast, that was one of the first things we talked about, right? Where we have kind of this trio where you have, like you said, Livewire, Garth, Lightning Lad, whatever is the id, right? He's just fiery, impulsive. Then you have Cosmic Boy being the ego, right? He's the person like thinking about that. And then you have Saturn Girl, it's kind of the super ego of the bunch, right? So anyway.
Yeah.
All that and more you can find on the Long Live the Legion podcast.
which totally you should check out, because it's wonderful that you get into these character profiles, and it's great insight into these characters, because like it's easy to see that Cosmic Boy is really useful in a fight, and we get a dope shot right here of a thing that I've always wanted to see, and I'm so glad it happens here, which is Cosmic Boy and Pharaoh being used as a double whammy. Using magnetism.
I love when they came up with that. That was great.
To fastball special an Iron Man.
Yeah, that's gonna hurt. That's really gonna hurt.
It's so good.
I'm gonna throw Pharaoh at you. That's gonna hurt.
It's so good. But they engage with the Servants of Darkness, and so we get to see them getting battered around by them. And so yeah, we see the Green Lantern one, we see the Martian, and we see Clark Kent. They're pretty goddamn tough, as you would infer. I don't know which one's the weakest in that group, actually.
Yeah. Well, as Violet says, they are so not covering themselves with glory.
Yeah.
And we note that the one that is clearly the Superman one in the group, when he punches Superboy's like, man, that felt like I just got hit by Big Blue. So we're right off the bat like establishing that. And again, if you're a fan of the Great Darkness saga and you're thinking these are like shadow copies, then that's like, okay, it's doing that story again. But in fact, nope, it's pulled from time, because we're adding more fourth dimensional bullshit to this.
All right, so let's get back to Legion World,
where Garth is having a emotional breakdown because of being trapped in a different body.
Not only that, but Saturn Girl, who is, I think they were engaged to be married before the whole Legion Lost thing took place, is obviously very uncomfortable around him for the obvious reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it would be uncomfortable even if he looked like Garth but was made of crystal. Like, that would just be a difficult situation. But he's made of crystal and looks like a person who became one of their great enemies.
Yeah, the person who killed him, basically. Yeah,
that killed him. That killed Monster Girl.
There was something that if I had stayed on the Legion and I threw this at the editor, was that in the old vintage Paul Levitt's book, remember they would have like them at rest, and they'd have their group shots. And, Timberwolf would be a block and stuff like that. You'd see the little factions, the little cliques that were within the Legion. And I wanted to kind of imply that the Legion Lost team, you would see it in background pictures a lot, was that they always kind of hung out with each other because they were forged through something different, like those bonds. And I was hoping that if we did it enough times, real fans would catch that those guys always congregated with each other. It would, and to ever state it, I think would just be a waste. I hate when you just can't let the story write itself. Like no one would say, "Hey, I noticed that you guys always stick together." I wanted it to be like to something that the fans would pick up on. But we're all booted.
Yeah. The things that we wish. Chris, I have a question for you about drawing. So from your perspective as an artist who worked from the 90s into the sort of like the revolution of like modern like coloring techniques. So Element Lad has this very crystalline kind of design to him, which has one thing of note is that like the pencils are done in a colored style. Is there anything that any considerations you have to make when you're doing a character that has that sort of extra layer of like computer like coloring going on?
Not really. I mean, I drew him in the pencils. He's definitely crystalline, and if I remember the colorist Rhonda Patterson, who was really good. I think Steve, the editor, always kind of made sure to make sure she knew. But after a while, we're all clicking on the same page anyway, and didn't need to be reminded. Like back in the day, if you want to do like separate color effects, you do them on vellum, which would be separate from the artwork, would be inked, and sometimes it'd be like entire layers different from the artwork. But nowadays, everything is it didn't affect my drawing at all.
Okay.
Now, it's interesting you say that, Chris. I picked up at the Baltimore Comic Con last year, I picked up a page from one of the early Jeff Moy Legionnaires books, and it has that same effect. So it has that kind of that like you said, the vellum with the...
it's like it's an overlay. Yeah,
right, and it's aligned with the actual page and everything. It's kind of fascinating. So.
Oh yeah, they're like I was. You should see some of these things like that. Some of them had 3 layers. Oh, wow. Because there'd be like, it would depend how extensive it would get. And it'd be annoying when you had the original artwork. Man, I can't really appreciate it because I have to go through one layer and the other. But that was before the advent of computer coloring and stuff.
Right.
And while computer coloring brought a whole new dimension, I do think creatively it gave them too many tools. While the old 64 color process, I think they had to be more creative. You know, with like the colors that they used, like you could really tell who knew color theory and who didn't. Because like you remember those old image books where color was just every page was hyper saturated, and then some of them were really good at it, and then you had guys who just like, oh, I have this new toy, these new tools, and then every page had to have some kind of an effect, and they forget that coloring is also just as equally important as the artwork itself. You are telling a story. Your eye needs to go somewhere. Like Michael Golden, he was the master of using the old 64 color process. If you look at his covers for Marvel and DC over the years, he would use purples and yellows for background elements, and your eye knew exactly where to go. He knew how to paint with color. And a lot of these guys just nowadays there's more guys who are really good at it. But I do kind of miss like when you see like these old new editions where they reprint them and they recolor them. Like when they recolor Jack Kirby, I hate it. I hate it. It's like, what are you doing? It kind of worked a little with Walt Simonson.
I was just gonna bring up that yesterday someone shared on Blue Sky a Walt Simonson thing, and I was like so bothered that it was recolored.
Yeah, it's like, and they do a better job on the Walt Simonson stuff than 95% of the other ones, but it's still, I miss the primary because it's Walt Simonson. He did the color like he knew. Same with Jack. You know, those colors, those flats made the artwork pop 10 times more than all of these little color scales you're throwing in there, which are all fighting for your attention.
Oh yeah, I see this stuff, like there's certain colorists from the 70s and 80s, Tatjana Wood.
Oh yeah.
Like her stuff is so good, and that's part of the story. So whenever I see that recolored, like I think it's Swamp Thing she was on, like those old Alan Moore, like nobody should touch those. Those are as perfect as they can be.
Oh.
I think they have once or twice, and I think they realized everyone said don't do that.
Oh, good.
You know, but same like, you know, like the old Giffen Legion from the 80s, like those shouldn't get touched either. Like that's the art, right?
And it also worked. The colors look great. They I didn't notice them being off, you know. It becomes more distinct when you actually see it now. It's distracting.
Yeah, no, I can't agree more. Like those other old coloring jobs are so good when they're done well, and to change them is just.
And it's not like I'm an old fuddy-duddy, I'm stuck in my ways. If they were doing it better, I mean, I'd begrudgingly admit it looks great, but I mean, I'm not getting paid to like it or dislike it. It's like what works is what works. When I see a lot of those old, I think they stopped doing that with Jack Kirby's work because people were audibly complaining. They were like, no. And so when they reprinted the Fourth World stuff in the hardcovers, they even printed them on almost like a newsprint type paper. And chef's kiss. It's like, it's still beautiful.
It's good, but I will say the colors in this look gorgeous and are a good balance of like being able to use like modern gradient technologies.
Yeah, Rhonda was terrific. We loved her.
With just like a lot, like very very nice control of that color scheme. But yeah, so moving on. So yeah, we have a scene with Emra and Garth where they're trying to connect, but it's just awkward. We cut to the Legionnaires like doing a wrap up of the fact that they just had this whole fight and sort of going over the details, and we start to see this issue of Kid Quantum having like a lapse in time. It's initially presented as if she just sort of spaces, but as we see, it actually is will eventually be her being able to perceive herself moving backwards through time in a cool sequence. So again, lots of good setup and payoff. I appreciate that. We have a nice little romantic walk between Invisible Kid and Brainiac 5.
I can tell you how that came about. That was not part of the script.
Another one not on my question list. So that
was not. It was never part of the story. It was Steve Wacker literally said to me, "Have him kiss him on the cheek, just to fuck with the fans."
Oh my god!
Let's just do that. You know, and I said, "Of course, yeah, I get it," because you could see Lyle's face is like, "Oh," you know, like. He's totally like, so yes, it was never planned. It was more of, and I loved it because it added like, it's like we say, where if you have to state what's going on, sometimes you could just let the scene speak for itself. You're losing the moment. and yet people have talked about it ever since, which was like mission accomplished.
God damn it.
Yeah.
If they could have done a 5 years later for the reboot continuity, like, and they didn't pick up with Lyle and Brainy, like, being an item, like, I would have been so fucking mad.
Well, Chris, did Steve tell you, or did you already know that they were going to out, or they were thinking about outing Lyle?
No, I mean, I think it was always, because, you know, with Legion fandom, like the real fans, all of these ideas and stories and theories that circulated, they're all passed on. We all know it. And because Legion heads are nuts, you know, we just like go over everything. And that's what makes us Legion fans, you know, and I'm not apologizing for it. I'm proud, you know. I think it was literally like, as I got the script, you know, and I was coming up to those pages, like, yeah, just have him peck a kiss on his cheek. And we both laughed about it, because it wasn't like done in a mocking way by any means. It was just more like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's do that.
No, I was just thinking, because back in the when Roger Stern was writing the Legionnaire stuff before you know, Andy and Dan, you know, there was the whole mysterious thing where he was going to go meet Kondo Arlik, but they never really explained what that was all about, right? And you know, the creators actually said, he was going to meet Carlo on a date.
I mean, I think that it's like Steve, the editor, he was a genuine Legion fan, so he had read 5-Year Legion, Kurt Swan, all of that stuff. So he definitely had an appreciation for all of that. And I mean, there was even something in the last issue we did, and I'm not sure if I have to look at the old pages, but there was supposed to be a scene with Brand just in the background. And he said, how about you have Brand's going like this to his head, almost like he's mentally, you know, because there was the implication that maybe he was John Jones, right? That kind of thing at one point. Is it maybe he's just using some mental powers? Just leave it like that and let fans think. And I love that. It was like, that's awesome. A really cool, but it also showed just how much he understood the assignment. You know, you do the Legion, you got to have these Easter eggs, but they have to be Easter eggs that make sense, that really tie into things that make fans genuinely smile.
Yeah, no, love it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, so they have this nice little romantic walk as they walk past these catastrophists that we set up, this doomsday cult that don't even care which doomsday that they're like following, as long as there's something that's a doomsday for them.
Yeah.
No, I was wondering about this. I figured it took them just a long time to get there, because, you know, prior to this story, right? Like the Earth has been like terraformed, then paved over by Robotica. And then before that, there was the Blight. I mean, where were these guys this whole time? Come on.
Things move fast.
Oh, that was just
they move fast.
That was the result of it, right? Like if Earth is almost destroyed every 3 months, do you just go, all right, I'm giving up? Like,
and I mean, like, to be fair, in a Legion timeline, Earth does get destroyed, but so the doomsday, so the doomsday aspect is like is fitting. But anyway, they walk past this doomsday cult. They just set them up, and they're going to be important later because they get used as fuel to power Apocalypse. But. So Invisible Kid and Brainiac 5 are inside the Time Institute on Earth, and that is where they get attacked via boom tube by Orion and what appears to be a Thanagarian hawk woman.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, she was angry.
Yeah. So Jmike, I figured you'd be excited about that. Do you want to take a moment there to?
Where do I begin? Like, this brought joy to my heart because I'm a big Thanagarian fan.
Same here.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, I can't wait. Like, my secret hope is that new DC universe they're building with James Gunn, because Hawkgirl's there, we might eventually get the Thanagarian invasion. And I was like, oh, please.
That would rock. That would rock.
That'd be so cool.
I would love to see an actual Hawkman. You know, like full appreciation of all that history. I always said you could do Hawkman as your next Highlander movie with all of like the timelines and everything. You could literally make Hawkman like so different from any of the MCU movies.
That would actually be fucking dope.
And for people who want to talk about diversity, you literally could just show an opening montage where Carter Hall has been literally every ethnicity, you know, through every walk of life. So it's like no one's gonna get pissed off. You know, it's like he's been them all. He's been a samurai. He's been a knight. He's been a Chinese peasant. He's been everything. Yeah. And in every one of those with Sierra.
Now I'm just picturing like so cool. a like a rapidly cut version of him like swinging a mace between the different personas, and he always has a fucking mace. It doesn't like each version of him is always like
it's a cowboy. He's got a mace,
exactly, like it's a big club or something like that. It's like it's setting appropriate, but it's always a big fucking cudgel of some kind. And you just like get this like smash cut between him all. Anyway, getting back to the story, we then cut back to Legion World, where we get Cosmic Boy and Kid Quantum having a nice little romantic scene together. And I like this romance. I know that Kid Quantum is not the Cosmic Boy like forever, like it's Night Girl. Yeah. But so actually, you guys were talking about that. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, Night Girl is or Lita Jath, who has the power to create dark fields. I'm sorry, that's
Shadow.
She has super strength
in darkness.
Yeah. She's strong in darkness.
She's inverted Superman,
and that's no, that's the historical one. But here, I mean, Night Girl is introduced once in this era of the Legion, but we never see her again. But this relationship, this romance, seems just very organic to me. Right.
It does come out of nowhere, but it worked.
Yeah, it works. I mean, because she's the new Legion leader. By the way, kudos to DNA for making the first female of color leader of the Legion. So
of all the characters not to put in the further iterations, I was really sad when Kid Quantum got just tossed. She was a great character. I loved her.
Although we did get since we're talking about Darkseid as part of this, we did get a glimpse of her in the Darkseid Legion for this event that's happening this summer.
Oh, she is? Oh, I haven't checked up on it.
Yeah.
Oh,
she's in the big splash page from I guess the All In special at the end.
Oh, I don't know if it ties into anything, but I recently did some Legion of Superheroes trading cards for DC.
Oh, nice.
It's coming up through Fleer, and it's an upcoming card set, but I don't know how it ties in, because I drew DNA. I mean, I drew that version of Cosmic Boy. I drew Lightning Lad with the metal arm. I drew Saturn Girl. I drew Vril Dox. I drew Brainiac 5, and I drew Superman. So I don't know if that implies any future connection. They haven't told me anything, but I got to draw the versions of the Legion that I drew.
That's awesome.
In an upcoming card set. So do with that what you will, because I have no answers.
Interesting.
Let's keep my eyes out for the cards.
One thing I note that you did draw is, so the bottle that Kid Quantum pours from is like the one from Star Trek, which I've actually seen.
Oh, you caught that!
Which I've actually seen the original bottle.
Yes, that's exactly. It was like Romulan ale or something.
Yeah, right. No, it's if you go to Bardstown Bourbon Company, they've got a whiskey room, and they've got the original bottle from Star Trek in there. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
It's
of course you would catch that case, but yeah,
it's the exact Venn diagram of my overlap of interest in spirits, interest in Star Trek, and interest in comics.
Wow.
So here's my only thing about this scene is that, man, for somebody getting laid, Cosmic Boy is really given. Yeah, he's kind of a hard ass.
That's true. Yeah.
What the hell?
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, you'd think he'd be happier.
Right.
So we get Dreamer showing up, and I was shocked to be reminded that, like, oh yeah, she wasn't part of the Legion until just now in this timeline. The little thing, because I think of the reboot as like hitting all the major beats of the Legion, fairly concisely, all things considered. But it's like, oh yeah, it did take them a while. Anyway, so she informs them that the precogs are saying that there is no more future, setting up this whole like time problem that is going on. And meanwhile, Pharaoh has a nice little scene with Superboy, and I was talking about this before. I like that Pharaoh, who is from the 20th century, has this conversation with Superboy, and like we get to be like, oh yeah, like how is it living in the future? Like, would you want to go back? Like, now you've made your future. Cool.
There is an Easter egg in that scene where Superboy is wearing a Karate Kid T-shirt that was from a costume contest from the 70s. There's a hand, like a karate hand, and it was a fan Karate Kid costume. Okay. And I asked Steve if I could do it, and he said, "Hell yeah!" So it was a literal. It was only old school fans were going to catch that if they
wondered what was up with that, because
was.
I was like, what is going on with this?
It was from a costume. It was from a fan costume contest, and the hand it's such a goofy costume.
Yeah,
but I'm like, yes, I got to throw that on the shirt. I was like, please let me do that, and he let me.
That's a wonderful Easter egg. Yeah, and then we get a very nice shot. This is competing for the episode art. I do think I'm going to go with that Legion spread that from earlier, but this is a good central image of Superboy and like a good looking Superboy.
Yeah, as you notice, he's still lean. He hadn't hit the Mike McCone muscle gym yet, but I was still keeping him lean. You know, I toyed with that a few times. A couple of the shots were a little too grandiose and overdone. I was like, no, he's just coming out of a dressing room. I don't want him to be like this and stuff like that. I figured a little more casual, and that I was really happy. And you see the mirror reflection of Pharaoh going like that. I was very happy with how that came out.
Yeah, no, very, very nice details there. Then, so if you're reading on the DC Universe app, it recommends reading the Legion Secret Files 303 or 3003 number 1, which I get well enough. We'll cover it real quickly, but it's not like there's not much of a story.
No. Well, I mean, every like few years, they would do one of these Secret Files issues for the Legion, just because I think it's one of the things where, you know, there's so many characters and there's a lot of lore. If you're new to it, it's a nice thing to have.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have. Like like the Secret Files books are great especially for fans who want to like get caught up on like what is the deal with this book? Who are the major players? It's like Who's Who, but like.
I think there's a great, if I remember correctly, there's a great moment with Karate Kid and Superboy.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's that, and Karate Kid has a great line in there. Superboy says, "Oh man, you saved me. You saved him. I was about to hit him or something like that, or wreck him or something." And Karate Kid calmly says,
"No. It's you're very close. It's Cosmic Boy chastises. You could have hurt him, and he said, "No, he wouldn't."
It's just like real matter of factly.
Yeah.
No, and it wasn't even bragging. It was just that was Val.
Yeah. So this issue has the framing device that places it as being part of this larger story. I would honestly I don't know where to put this because it feels a little out of continuity.
No, I think this works kind of. It's a nice little, you know, in the middle of some of these events, you know, sometime after that.
Well, here's why. So the next issue appears to be Superboy's public appearance, and they reference it in this. And this is where it gets weird because Superboy's public appearance is referenced, but it happens after the attack on the Time Institute. So that's why I'm like a little like, where does this exactly fall in the timeline? It's like a Dragon Ball Z movie, you know, like, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's a Secret Files. Like, it's fine. It has the framing device of the Servants of Darkness traveling, and then we've got this Trudy Trousseau like framing or like narrative of her like doing an expose on the Legion, and it's a good excuse to like be like, who is this Legionnaire? Who is this Legionnaire? And they kind of just go through it all. It's, you know, a good catch up for like what the deal is. I'm gonna throw this one out there to Mr. Jmike Folson. Was this at all helpful to like catch you up on like what was going on in the Legion of Superheroes at this time?
Kind of. It was kind of cool to see like a little bit of a backstory for like certain people. Like I was kind of wondering who is that snake lady?
Yeah.
I remember her. They're like, oh, okay. There was an accident where she got hit with a beam or something. Purple Ray.
Something like that. Yeah. They dealt with this whole thing that was kickstarting evolutions, and it blasted her. And so her natural form is a snake.
I always thought, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it just made me think, was that secret file was that if Legion was like, let's say it was in the best universe, like an X-Men selling title where it was really like putting out big numbers, was that I always thought, instead of doing what Marvel does, where they'll put out a successful X-Men book, but then do like 11 inferior versions of it, which dilute the brand. I don't mind one or two, but make it the best creative teams, like make every issue matter. I mentioned it to Steve that wouldn't it be great that you would have a parallel Legion series, sort of like a Legion Insider, where it'd be since the Legion is so big, you'd have your main story, and then you'd have the side stories that supplement the main story with other members of the Legion that tie into the greater whole, that you would read them parallel with the main book. And you could read the main book without it, but the side story is like, here's what Invisible Kid during this story that made that thing happen in the main issue, like pay off.
It's kind of like Invincible World.
I've never read that, but
or Invisible Universe, whatever the side book that they had, like Guarding the Glyph. I mean, they had like a whole bunch of like side books for Invincible that were it was never one consistent book, but there was
Right.
at least at one point one spinoff book that was like it was Invincible Universe or something to that effect.
I just think it could have been really cool, but of course it doesn't have, the book doesn't sustain those kind of sales, but I think it would have been really cool with something like the Legion, which is such a gigantic cast, where you don't feel like you're cramming everything into the main book just because you need to give side Legionnaires things to do. You
Well,
could give
that's why the 90s were good, right? Because you had the 2 titles, right?
Yes.
And you could let the stories breathe a little bit more.
The thing is, though, I mean, I just think that I understood those books, but they still felt a little soft to me. You know, they felt a little more generic. I thought that I want like the side book to be just as good as the main book, so that they become like must read. And that's why when Marvel does, like I said, like when they did 10 Avengers books, you might get 2 or 3 that are actually kick ass, but the rest suck. You know, like, flat out, they suck, and they dilute the brand. It's like, yeah, maybe if you just not do that, you will have these books that will sell in perpetuity. You will have that audience come every damn month because you are handing them a quality meal every time.
Yeah, I mean that's why I thought that the Legion as a relaunch of the Legion of Superheroes was a pretty strong like singular book to sort of like keep the brand all like kind of together. I've got a question for you all, which is that as they kind of cut through the different interviews of people and like here's like some coverage of them at like their mess hall and so forth, they walk into a room and they've got Wildfire saying to Timberwolf, she's got 7, and he's talking clearly about Shikari. Like 7 of what? 7 boobs? Seven of what? Like my brain's, and he's an energy being. So like, what is he like? What?
Unless he's not talking about Shikari.
Well, but that's the thing that they've been setting up. Like, then who has 7?
He could just be telling a dirty joke.
He could be, yeah.
Because it is. I mean, remember, Wildfire was one of those outgoing characters. You know,
that's true.
He would be
I prefer to think of it as being Shikari, in which case it's like, well, what?
I never got the impression that it was Shikari. I think he was just telling a dirty joke.
Fair.
That we were getting like the punchline. You know, and he's also talking to Timberwolf, who's kind of a rough and tumble guy. That they could just be having a moment, but I don't think it was Shikari.
Again, it's just funny to think about.
You know, it's funny. Based on Shikari, Dan and Andy did not set out to recreate Dawnstar. It was just that when they were creating her, they realized that she was Dawnstar.
Okay.
You know, but it was not their intention to do it. And the thing is, I love Dawnstar, but I actually love Shikari more. You know, and I know that that's sacrilege. It's just that Shikari was such a great character. You know, she was that fish out of water type, but she was a badass fighter. I love the skin. I loved her look. I think you could have had a separate Dawnstar, but then it would kind of undermine Shikari. But she gave it that alien kind of quality. I was a huge Shikari fan, and it was that rare time where it's like you mess with the original toys, but you did something really good. You know,
it felt like a really cool update.
Yeah, it's like that was really, really cool. And those people were still very much. They had that kind of Native American kind of people of the land kind of aesthetic, you know.
Right, but it was a little less problematic.
It was more alien.
Yeah,
right? Well, it wasn't as right.
Yeah.
So it's like I know that that's sacrilege, but I loved Shikari. You know, she was one of my favorites.
I've always said if you're going to reboot the Legion again, if you take Shikari and Dawnstar and you combine them into one character, because I agree that Coipel design in the beginning is gorgeous, but then the Grell design it's
great,
is amazing as well. And you're like, because you can't really have the two of them together because they do essentially the same thing. But if you can combine them somehow and make it so that it works for both fans of both versions of the Legion, I think that might be the best.
And Shikari had something that Dawnstar didn't have, was that Shikari was
she had her like combat form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and she could
I would argue you actually could have both of them if the Legion was that big, because it would make sense that you would have multiple navigators. But that's only in that like 40-person Legion scenario. I want us to move through because we have waxed poetically quite a bit, and we have a whole other segment to get through. So we reinforce the Kid Quantum seeing apparitions. I shouldn't say apparitions because that's a Legionnaire. Kid Quantum seeing things and having like these weird like time stuff happening. And in this scenario, we see. In this scenario, it's more you actually see figures. So it actually looks like what we will ultimately see. So it's more setting up the ultimate like time dilation story arc. And she, wants to confide in it with Cosmic Boy, so we get more of that relationship, but it doesn't necessarily go anywhere here. Then we get the Superboy. I actually rather enjoy this like weird little outfit he's wearing in this one, this like combat gi or like workout attire that he's wearing as he faces off against Karate Kid.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I wouldn't want it as his like regular outfit, but as like a workout outfit, I think it looks pretty good. I like that we get the conversation about the believers in the Last Sun. Like this mythologizing of Superman, I think is really interesting and like makes a lot of sense. It makes sense that a group that is founded on the idea that they have this reputation of a superhero who was so damn cool that they went back to his like teen self and brought him to the future just to be like, look how cool we think you are. Like that fan club aspect of the Legion of Superheroes is important. And so like it's important to like update the context in terms of like how people see Superman and how people see Superboy in this modern world. And having Cosmic Boy be a believer in the like ideology of it is very cool.
Yeah. It is interesting though, because this is the first time we see it, and obviously writers are free to introduce new elements whenever they want, but at the beginning of this run, Valor is the character who is shown as being an actual religious figure. Of course, Valor becomes Mon-El. So it's just interesting contrast that you see both of the heavyweights, right? The super characters have these religions following them, basically.
And again, so annoying. This is where, because again, it doesn't seem to be like they explain where they are in this story, but like they could have been at the start of this issue on the same like on Legion World together before they went off to the other galaxy. Like this doesn't seem to be in the midst of the actual story. You could have easily had a Mon-El Con-El little conversation right there, just to be like, hey, we know each other.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a missed moment.
Anyway, so we get also a reminder that Cosmic Boy is not particularly impressed with Superboy. He gets an off the record moment there. We go over to Censor and we get the whole explanation of her having been transformed from Snake to not Snake, Snick.
Snecky.
And then we get the explanation of where all those like really powerful members like Chameleon and Mon-El and Gates and Kinetics and RJ Brand.
But did you notice how they stopped giving background on those characters by the end of this book? Like the beginning, all the characters that get introduced, it's like they are in love or they're crushing. This is happening and this is happening, and then when we get to the end, it's like this is Mon-El, and we're done. And like it was just, I was kind of like, did the writers just like, we're tired, we're writing way too much stuff, we have this big story. I know that's not what happened, but it was very interesting to see like how it just Chameleon done. And you're like, come on, he's important. I want to see some stuff. So,
well, in the next page, we get the thing that just happens throughout this run of this era of the books, which is that we get Leviathan just being big for no reason, just
and they're on a space station, for God's
just
sake.
As big, just for the sake of it, just because like it's a group shot, and so we need to establish like oh right, yeah, she's big, even though it'd make just as much sense for her to be small.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris, I wanted to ask you about that. Were you given notes to say make Vi big?
I believe I was. I believe if I recall, I was pretty good with trying to make the writers happy. So if they asked her to be big, she would definitely be big. But I don't know why she was big. It was just for fun, I guess. I mean, I remember there was an issue where she was working out and she was big, but she was working out with robots or something like that, like some combat robots. I don't know, just, but it was a Legion thing. They did that back in the days of Grell. They did it, not in the old Swan days, but he generally, if you put Colossal Boy in the background, he generally had to stand out for some reason. Hey, that's the big guy. Like, I know that guy. Like they had to be performing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense from the standpoint of like, well, it's a group shot. We need to, anyone that we can give their shtick. It's again like the like if they've got a distinct look like that. use them in that scenario. So then we get a tour of the Legion worlds with Sparks or Spark, pardon me. Sparks is a character from from Superboy and the Ravers, a totally weird little book from the 90s.
Yeah, we don't need to talk.
We get the reminder about the Garth being Livewire. This one does get a profile. He gets a full page to himself and a whole bunch of text box, and because he's important.
Yes, exactly.
So I was just going to say that was a moment that just made no sense to me. It's like, hey, we've got a reporter flying through. We're gonna stop her in front of a Legionnaire who everybody thinks is dead, but we're not going to explain anything. We're just going to keep going. And I was like, I get that they're trying to explain everybody, and there's the conceit of the story, but I was like, this just this seems odd. It's like, oh yeah, that's my brother, but he died, and
and now he looks like one of history's great monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense to keep on moving, but unless you're just sort of saying the Legion world is full of wonders and so forth, and my brother's alive still, in a weird way, it's kind of a Brody way. Anyway, so moving on, we get a wrap up of the oh hey, here was our video on this whole thing, and then we get the Servants of Darkness coming, and this beat of the Legion can face anything, and then it's now we're going to deal with Darkseid, and so it makes sense that it is part that you would want this in any collection discussing Foundations. It just doesn't really make sense in terms of where it falls in the story.
Yeah, that is very true. There's just huge problems. Invisible Kid and Brainiac 5 are on Legion World, and they're not being attacked by the Servants.
And the Servants are busy doing something else, which we know that they were doing something. So like I said, it doesn't bother me. It's just clearly a side story that doesn't really quite fit the continuity, but it's an info issue anyway. So it's whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Last issue that we are going to cover on the Men of Steel podcast before we take a break and head on over to Long Live the Legion. So we open with Kid Quantum having a weird dream, taking her what I think is to the mountain that they found Garth on, where they put the I think it's
I can't remember.
It is what it looks like. It's the snowy mountain, and
I remember Snowy Mountain, but I can't remember if it had context.
Okay. Well, regardless, it's quickly revealed to be some kind of nightmare or day, waking nightmare kind of thing. And she fires off a blast, and it actually tears open a wall in her quarters. And then we cut back to Invisible Kid and Brainy dealing with the Servants. And this is again why it's it's an awkward fit in terms of where in the issue it falls. Maybe it happens right before they head over to the Time Institute. I don't know. Like I said, it's just but then Superboy doesn't show up until after the Time Institute thing. So again, it blah 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 blah. Yeah, timey-wimey. I like that Brainiac 5 deals with Orion pretty well. When it's just I said, hey, and his force fields are really dope. This is appropriate. This is a member of the Legion who is that goddamn smart. Again, the tech should be available to more people, but he should have the best version of it. And so that's appropriate.
Yeah, I made a note here that it was awesome seeing him using the force field technology for offensive reasons for going on the attack.
Yeah, they did a great job. Abnett and Lanning really took advantage of that extremely well. I loved seeing Brainiac throw down, and almost and in a dispassionate kind of way. Still, he was doing that before the Sherlock movie. He was already breaking down fight variables in his head. And he would be that guy. But I like that they didn't oversell it. It was just that's Brainiac. That's Brainy.
He goes a couple rounds with Orion, and Invisible Kid does well against this Hawk woman person, but then they escape, or the Servants flee, and Invisible Kid follows, and I like that he's just you'll find me, you'll figure it out because you're Brainiac 5. I trust you. I love you. I have faith in you. And then they leave a bomb, and so Brainiac 5 apparently puts a force field around him and some important tech and some important people. And yeah, so the Legion shows up to clear away the damaged Time Institute, and this is where Superboy shows up, and everyone's just oh my god, so fucking Superboy's back! This is fucking crazy, and it causes all of this commotion about it. And Trudy Trousseau's whole story is about it's crazy that Superboy's back. And again, getting back to it's weird that she's so dispassionate in the Legion Secret Files. It's just a weird detail. I know I keep harping on it, and it's just yeah, that's all. Anyway. So I love that the choice to wear the classic Superman outfit is immediately like Cosmic Boy's like, so do you think that was a good idea?
And I'm like, my point here is like, you know what? Superboy should just tell him to pound sand because he's not the boss. It's Kid Quantum's the boss. So, you know what? It's like, screw you, man.
Also fair.
I got the DNA, bro.
But I mean, like, he's not wrong. Like, he apologizes to Cosmic Boy because Cosmic Boy is right. And yeah, Pharaoh tries to like take the heat because he's the one who like had the costume worked up that way. But whatever. We cut over to get an exposition dump from Brainiac 5 talking to everyone here, finding out that the universe is getting smaller, which is one thing that is just like crazy detail. And then we're also figuring out the whole like time dilation issue that is going on. There's a lot of timey-wimey in this plot. I never understand where it's just like there's no more past anymore. Like I don't fully understand how you would ever be able to tell where it's just like there's no more 1942. Right. How would you know?
Yeah.
Well, if you start asking any of the questions about the time problems in this story, your brain breaks a little
Which
bit.
is fine.
Like it's and it's the conceit of this again, it's the conceit of the story, but yeah, I mean it's the same like when they're going, oh yeah, there's a huge temporal anomaly 10 years ago, and you're like, how do you know, like how is that being censored? And it's just you kind of wipe it away with, well, this is our tech or this is our science.
They have time sensors.
To me, the one that always gets caught is like, if Superman was taken from when he was 15 and he hasn't gone back, then how is there a Superman? And then how does everybody know there's a Superman? Right. And then my brain hurts. So it's
The other thing is the fact that this is a huge time altering crossover event makes it feel like this should have been the end of the story if you were going to go into the 3-boot era. Like it would have made more sense like coming right off of this. But that's the insane part of all of this. Like secret files shouldn't have existed if you were going to cancel this book. Like this whole story feels like a go into the future. Like this book's going to be excited. We're getting fandom again. And so every part of this, it doesn't make sense knowing where the book is going to go.
Yeah. They, especially like I said, they did have plans. They had arcs that they had planted lots of seeds. Like I said, they were going to bring back Garth and they were separating them, and they were going to bring back the progenitor, and possibly the omniphagus, all of that stuff. Like, because, scale, like the Legion should have universe ending. And then here you could have 2 possible universes ending, which is just so Legion. Also, they had plans for Ra's al Ghul, was that he was going to be kept at the most secure location in the UP, which was on Legion World. But that was going to have its own problems, was that he was, from what Dan and Andy told me, was that they were going to find that he is kind of got a corrupting element of him, because he's Ra's al Ghul. He's the master manipulator. He knows these things. What was going to happen is that because of his knowledge, the hidden knowledge of the world that most people don't know, because what he knows was never put on paper and things like that, is that they find them turning to him for help at times. And that in itself would have its own dilemmas,
Sure.
And all pitfalls that are leading into them. So there was a plan. There was a definite plan. Go further. And I remember wanting to use my Secret Six story was that the president of the UP, Tanya Wazo's bitch mother, basically has a Legion world being infiltrated. And it was going to be with the new Secret Six, among them being Duplicate Boy and Dev M and Mig, the other Karate Kid. He was supposed to be one of them, and you were going to have him and Val square up. It was like 3 more. I'm just having a brain fart who they are. It might have been Saturn Queen or something like that. I can't remember, but it was all Legion-related characters. But through this story, it was supposed to be revealed at the end that it looked like it was just testing their defenses of Legion World. But the whole point was to get to Ra's al Ghul, because Dev M is sent there to kill him, because if they can't get him and rip every fucking secret from his head, then nobody can have him as far as the president is concerned. And I wanted that really dark, almost Section 31 fly, to use the Star Trek analogy, that she's a president, but she's not like Brand or anything like that. She plays fast and dirty.
Oh yeah, well, she tried to kidnap her own daughter.
Yeah.
So.
And she'll take out Ra's al Ghul because it's like, if I can't have what's in his head, no one can.
Yeah.
So sorry, I went on
No,
a
it's
tangent.
all
I
good.
know, but I'm
Love it.
just remembering all of like this is like some serious memory lane for me, and I'm just remembering all the things that we were throwing out back then. But yeah, they had some serious plans, and it really was shocking when the axe came, because it literally just kind of came out of nowhere. Like, what? We're done?
Well, I'll give you one more thing, and you, I mean, I could have these numbers wrong, but it's the sales numbers that I can find online. Legion 25 was the second best-selling book of the series.
Really? Oh,
So like having that reboot, having that like doing that whole big extra issue that brought in almost 25% more readers than the issue before. So like this book was like, okay, we're back up and it's going. So that's why like this whole story just seems so crazy when you know what's coming.
yeah, and they actually threw in something to keep the readers back, like
Yeah.
Superboy. You
Yeah.
know, like you give like here's a 20th, here's a big anniversary, but we're actually really giving you something that this actually will have merit. This is not just like a standalone. Like we want you to come with us. And here we got Superboy. Oh shit, it's Darkseid. You know, like this was a good point to hook readers. And I mean, I still don't understand it. I'm not sure which bean counter make that decision, because the reboot didn't boost sales either.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
As far as I know, I think it came out solidly, but then it just declined pretty fast.
Yeah, the numbers were better, but they weren't like, well, there's always that argument of like, was it the Legion that was boosted, or was it just the fact that it was Mark Waid?
Yeah, probably I would say,
Right.
when Mark brings his own pedigree to it and his own fans, but I'm sure not every fan would be there, because not every fan can get into the Legion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it like made sense as like, here's a relaunch to try to get more people. I don't know. Like it from the standpoint of trying to get more people, it makes sense to relaunch the book. Like, is the problem that they keep that has become their like thing to go to for the Legion? Yeah, it's the huge problem with the Legion of Superheroes now. Like that it always is a relaunch at every point, just because.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what was, as far as I could tell with the Bendis relaunch, I don't remember hearing that the fans were really into it.
Nope.
Oh no, I personally wasn't, and I'm actually really enjoyed Brian Michael Bendis' work for ages, but he was kind of in decline at that point. You know, like he had hit the point of we figured him out instead of being like the guy he was in the beginning. But I remember reading the first 3 issues, and I just kind of pieced out. Even though I love Ryan Sook's art, I was like, you have 3 issues and nothing's happened, and you have giant heads in conversations that are taking me out of it. And issue number 2, Robin has more lines and more scenes than actual Legionnaires that still never got a line, as I understood through several issues of the book, still didn't get to speak.
Shrinking Violet and Matter Eater Lad they never got
lines. From what I understood, they never got any scenes or dialogue, but Robin got like a third of an issue.
Yeah.
Well,
and you're like, that's not priorities when you come to the
no, it's not priorities. However, let's finish up this
yes, priorities.
So they get a message from Invisible Kid, who correctly figured out that Brainiac 5 would be able to figure out something. So Invisible Kid is narrating the whole sequence, and like he gets found out while he's like investigating everyone. But because the Legion has now updated their teleportation tech, they're on the fly, like they're there immediately. And that shows off just like how the team has become so much more advanced. So we get some wonderful like big spreads here. Just gonna stroke your ego, Chris. Like
I had a blast doing it. I was having so much fun.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Thank you.
And I'll tell you what, now that I know that it's a Martian, an evil Martian, that thing scares the shit out of me.
Good. He should be scary. I wanted to look like a Martian meets a xenomorph.
Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yep.
Now I see it.
Very, very effective there. The green accents is why I thought it might be a Jean Jones in like his most like evil Martian looking or like kind of form, because it has the white Martian body type. But I've just always sort of figured that green Martians and white Martians, because they're shapeshifters, ultimately could look like each other. Regardless, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, we get some dope Legion showing up to fight. We get Leviathan takes a full on direct blast at the Astro Force and just has her ribs broken. So she's obviously fairly tough in her big size. This is not a Black Goliath getting taken out by Thor situation here. But yeah, the Legion fights back, and this is where we get the kiss that we were talking about for a while earlier.
Sorry, we also get the little bit where it's Spark holding Violet after Violet's hurt when she's shrunk down.
Oh, nice! I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah, there was that moment. Yep.
That's nice. I like hinting at that relationship.
Yeah, there's also a call out in the next episode. Next issue.
It will be the next episode too,
as well, where she's also still carrying her, but then also there's some interplay between Spark and Timberwolf. So
yeah, that was intentional. Yes.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And yeah, so the cliffhanger is that now that they have sort of figured out the plan, they have figured out that the Servants of Darkness were pumping dark matter out of our universe into the past in order to create this giant dam in time by having more mass be disproportionately at this one point 10 years prior. Somehow they're able to figure all this out, because I don't trying to wrap my brain around how you like the mass.
It's Brainiac. That's all you need to know.
The mass that's between the atoms is now being transferred into another reality. Cool. Oh, okay. Or another time. Oh, okay. Cool. Again, it's a lot, but they reveal that it was that this thing that was surrounding the galaxy is actually a giant boom tube that's like sucking the dark matter out, which is pretty dope. And this is Darkseid's plan, that he's creating this time barrier, and we're going to find out some more when we continue. But that concludes Foundation Part 3. And on that note, we are going to pause this episode, and we're going to head on over to Long Live the Legion, and that's where we're going to finish up our coverage of this story. But on that note, Jim and Jay, who are you? What is this podcast that we're crossing over with? Where can people find you and follow you? Let's start with Jim.
Sure. Well, the Long Live the Legion podcast is Jay and I decided to, after talking across Discord and Reddit and several other platforms about Legion stuff, we're like, you know what? Hey, let's just have a podcast and talk about it. So we are doing that. We have the Long Live the Legion podcast is really designed to explore the themes of specific story arcs or characters or settings and things like that, versus going through episode by episode or issue by issue. We'll cover stories, like we're going to do Legion Lost, I think, soon. So, we'll do those kinds of things, but we're really designed to talk about the Legion so that, if you're kind of somebody who's either already a big fan of the Legion, you want to just geek out about it, or if you're new to it and you want to learn more about it, you can come and listen to what we have to say.
Awesome. And so you guys have been running now for several episodes. You're part of the Certain Point of View family.
Yes, thank you for bringing us in.
Yeah, I mean, I joked that you guys are doing a similar thing to what Men of Steel does, but for Superman, but for the Legion, for your case, where it's not necessarily like a specific, we're going to look at just like this one era and just, go issue by issue, like you said, that you're jumping around and you're showing off like all the complexities of the Legion. And it's so, I'm so happy that you're here. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Sure. Well, so I have my own personal Legion review website over at jimboslegion.blogspot.com. I try to do one issue a week, but I've been very lazy the last couple of months. But you can find me personally on Blue Sky at jimbofett.bsky.social. I'm on Reddit at jimbofett87 and on Discord as jimbofett on the Legion fan club Discord.
All right. And you can find me if you want to look for my reviews, and I review 2 issues a week, and I haven't been lazy. So I'm still, I just like doing that to bug Jim. You can find that at jmlonglivethelegion.blogspot.com. You can find me on Blue Sky at jmckiernan.bsky.social. And you can find me on Reddit or Discord. The name I go there is Drake Burrows. So any Legion fan will immediately get who my favorite Legion is.
Are you guys on Facebook?
We are on Blue Sky. So our Blue Sky address is longlivethelegion.bsky.social.
I just wanted to see, because that we could still keep in touch and stuff. And I posted a ton of Legion artwork on my page.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, so we're not on Twitter because I'm
I don't blame you. No need to explain. Yeah. Understood.
Yeah.
So yeah, but we are on B Sky. So if you are you on Blue Sky, Chris?
Oh no, not yet. Not yet. Okay. I was on Instagram, but my account got hacked, and I've been furious ever since.
Oh,
yeah.
On that note, Chris, where can people find you and follow you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. Pretty much that's it. LinkedIn and Facebook, but
old man.
and my phone number, and
what was that?
But if you got, I wouldn't mind keeping in touch with everybody. It's been a fun little jamboree, but those are Facebook is my primary right now because there's just so many professionals that I've known over the years, and we still keep in touch on there. And I had posted a bunch of scans from my lead. If you go through my art section in there, you can see like pencils from that Legion era, and I'm gonna be scanning a lot of this old Legion stuff that we're literally talking about now. That's why all these memories come back. I have to scan them all up. Sometimes I look at them and I go, how the fuck did I get that done on time? It's like, oh my God. But it did help that at that era, we were all on the same page and we were all very, very happy. Damn. Everyone was miserable because we were exhausted, but everybody was into what we were doing. And you didn't really get that impression from later iterations of the Legion. You always got the impression that somebody there wasn't really the fan, It's like, no, and that's the curse and the blessing of the Legion at the same time.
Yep.
Yes. On that note, someone who has been both cursed and I would argue blessed by the Legion is Jmike Folson, who has been subjected to this all. Where can people find you and follow you, Jmike?
It's never a curse. It's always fun. But yeah, I'm on Blue Sky at j5.bluesky.social, and we're on the Discord occasionally.
Yes. The Discord is a great place to come interact with us. So we're all on the CPOV Discord. Of course, the Legion has Long Live the Legion also has your own Discord server that people should also check out, where lots of fun conversations about the Legion is going on. But the Certain Point of View Discord is a great place to come interact with all of us. We post our episodes there. We have lots of conversations going on. There's a lot of really fun video game, sports, TTRPG, a lot of good conversations going on without it being like one of those Discord servers where it's just like you can't follow everything because the conversations are so rapid. Generally speaking, it's a good pace. I want to say on that one. And I should note that we when we're recording this, we have recently launched our Patreon for Certain POV Media, and that covers the shows that I produce, which is the show Another Pass and all the stuff on the YouTube channel. So I have to thank some people who are donating at the executive producer level. So I want to thank Carter Hallett, Sean Muir, Lee Greger, Memento Young, Logan Crowley, Joe Mastropiero, Casey and Nancy Aiken, Adam Samter, and Keith Lettinen. So I just wanted to thank all of them for coming in on the Certain POV Patreon. It's awesome. I have been putting out essays that are available to the free tier. So we have a lot of people who have joined at the free level, and it's been really cool to be putting out just random musings about stuff I was thinking about. And I've been doing those at a clip roughly one every 3 days. But it's a good place to come support this show and all the other stuff that I'm working on. So I just wanted to shout that out. Otherwise, you can find me on the Discord or on the Bluesky, where I am at Case Aiken. You can also find me on Instagram, where I am holding on to my AIM screen name for dear life, where you can find me at Quetzalcoatl5. Otherwise, I still have Twitter. I still have Facebook, but Facebook I'm on pretty frequently because it's, you can't help it. It's a Rolodex for everyone at this point. But yeah, when I get on Twitter, it's like, oh, right, I'm still here. Anyway, we're going to head on over to Long Live the Legion, which you should as well, where we're going to wrap up this arc. But until then, stay super, man.
Men of Steel is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are Jmike Folson and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Sophia Ricciardi. Our logo is by Chris Batista, and episode art is by Case Aiken. Our theme is by Geoff Moonen.
Hey, Jay.
Hey, Jim.
You're a fan of the Legion of Superheroes, right?
Yeah, I've been reading their adventures for decades.
Me too. It was tough at first with all the characters, but now I think I'm an expert.
It's not too hard to get into the Legion. And to make it even easier, we have a podcast called Long Live the Legion. We talk about different aspects of all its history to help you out.
So whether you're a new reader in the Legion Academy, or have your own flight ring, or anywhere in between, a Long Live the Legion podcast should be on your playlist.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.